Well, hello everybody. Welcome. Oh, hold on. I had a comment, I had some feedback from the list cam here that it's good size and everything, just maybe shift it over so it's not totally obscuring the minimap. That makes it more central, but, you know, okay, so let's do that. Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to another video. It's really weird, right? Like, the title for this video is Absolution Part 3. Oh, did I already grab everything? But we're actually at the end of like quite a good amount of playing of Janthir Wilds, because we've just done Absolution and we crammed in like a full replay playlist there as well. The title of the video is actually a little bit iffy too. About 20 minutes ago, the title of this video was I can't remember, something else. But it was about, you know, I was going to do a video that was going to be about the last of the content, because I've not seen everything yet. There's more of Barvanisos to explore. There's map comp to get. There's a jumping puzzle there. There's the South Sun roller beetle race, which I still remember, guys. Actually, we're on the wrong character altogether, aren't we? Let me just deposit all this crap here. I got crap everywhere on this now. I was in the so, oh god, too many subjects. Back when Janthir Wilds came out, I made club yarn, but I gifted it to Kerry. But I mean, I didn't get like certain achievements and things associated with making it, and so I was making a new club yarn. But the thing is, Kerry hasn't really played much Janthir Wilds. It didn't really grab her, so she was feeling bad that she'd got this legendary and then really used it. So she basically, while I'm in the middle of making another one, she essentially gave it back to me. So now, I'm like, I have club yarn now, which is amazing and very sweet and amazing about it. But I'm also halfway to making another club yarn, which I guess I'll sell. I don't know. There's obviously the new backpack as well to talk about. Alright, NPC speaking, that's my cue to get the hell out and swap over to our Guardian. So yeah, about 20 minutes ago, this video was all going to be about, you know, the jumping puzzle, the fractal. There's, of course, the new fractal to play as well. However, I've sort of changed it a bit. Okay, I'm lying. About 40 minutes ago, that's what it was titled. Because what I've done is, so for people watching off in the future, it's been 2 days since we beat the patch. And so...
I don't like you.
Wow. Were you talking to him? Or were you talking to me? Either way, very rude. It's been a couple of days since we beat the patch. Basically, instead of streaming back to back, I noticed immediately a lot of really good comments coming from you guys. Big, meaty walls of text. Lots of cool, good, decent food for thought. Not just me patting myself on the back, but sometimes people with interesting, you know, alternate ideas about the ending. So, you know, we're all kind of in that review-y period right now. We're kind of judging Janthir Wilds. We're judging the idea of mini X-Packs now that we've had 2 in a row, and we can probably actually like, get a good grip on them. So there were a lot of good comments, so I thought, you know, I'm not going to stream yesterday. Sorry, 2 days ago. I thought I'm going to let these comments build up, and we'll do a really good Q&A section. I was really excited about doing that Q&A section. Now, yesterday, it was insanely hot. I don't know what it was like for you guys where you are in the world, but it was so fucking hot. If you're following my Oblivion playthrough, I did an episode during like an incredible like hot heat wavy type weather, and my PC screen started flickering and the audio started breaking, and it was just a bit crazy. I didn't want to risk that again, so I didn't do it yesterday. But here we are today. I've actually also bought on Amazon, so I do have an aircon unit. The thing is, you know, they have like the nozzles. It's not like... Americans won't understand this because they use insane amounts of power and they all have AC units built into the houses and shit. But over here in the UK, you tend to get them like separate. And they'll have like big tubes, big nozzles that you drag out of your window, right? The thing is, I don't really have good access to my window. And the tube on the AC unit that I've got is very short. So I'm like sorting that out. Then once I get AC, it should be fine or whatever. But yeah, so basically, it was far too hot yesterday. And here we are. So I've got 2 days, basically, of comments from you guys. And it's a lot of comments. About 40 minutes ago, this video was titled one thing. And as I just actually started taking screenshots, like I've been reading them as they've been coming in, but actually taking the screenshots for this this section of the stream. It took me ages even just to get the screenshots. And there are so many of them. This might end up, guys, like this might be a Q&A stream. You know, with you guys over here in the live chat. Hello to everyone who's made it live, for what it's worth. It's good to see you all. But also, you know, just lots of discussion. I basically want to platform some of your takes. I have a feeling we're in for at least an hour of Q&A. And I don't mean that to to put anyone off or anything. It could be more. I think it'll be really interesting and really fun. I have separately. I've also been working on some of the precursor collections that I haven't got yet. These are the last 2 in the whole game, Zap and Sunrise. So I was working on Dawn. A lot of them are fractals, which when you're doing it solo is kind of annoying. I mean, you can solo fractals. I just tend to leave them to last. And then also, like, the Aether Blade jumping puzzle in Gandaren Fields. I'm happy to do any JP in the game except that one. That one's really annoying. So I skipped that. I also skipped the dry top one just because it's quite long, but I will do that. Anyway, so I have a bunch of footage of me running around, which we can use, so there'll actually be interesting footage going on too, which will hopefully be kind of nice, so we can do that a little bit. Let's actually get in the map. I don't really know why I'm just wandering around here in Lion's Arch. Just get back there and at least have some appropriate stuff. So, yeah, basically I'm going to put some comments up here, guys. See what we think about the ending. Another little thing, just a little insight into what's going on with me. Today, I very nearly didn't stream. I'm really ill right now. I'm really fucking ill. Well, I don't know if ill is the right term, so here's the story. Last night, I was a total fatty. And as a midnight snack, I air-fried a bowl of onion rings. Okay? Which, alright, judge me all you like. Okay? I like onion rings. I had onion rings and ketchup as a midnight snack. And it was fine, and it was nice, and it was whatever. I was maybe a bit greedy. Probably had too many, I guess. Because, I'll tell you what. I went to bed. I woke up in fucking... I've never had this before. Never. I woke up in so much pain from indigestion. It was unreal. Now, usually... So, what I mean by indigestion is like, you know, like a stabbing feeling in your intestines. Usually... In fact, any time I've ever had that in my whole life, it's been really low down, you know. You can tell that things are shifting a bit. You know, you might be a bit farty an hour or two down the line, and then whatever. You know, that's what, like, indigestion is to me. It's never that serious. It's never that severe. But I had it really, really, really bad high up. And I'll tell you what, I was so much pain. I could barely move, sitting there sweating in agony. I've started watching that Clarkson's Farm on Amazon, which, Jesus, I could go on and on about that. Anyway, oh, God, and I couldn't sleep. I was exhausted. I was so tired, but I couldn't sleep because it was so painful. And, like, I just, oh, man. And the worst thing was, right, like, I didn't have heartburn or, like, acid reflux. Like, nothing was properly coming up. But I could, like, do these little micro burps. You know, like, not a full-on burp, but a little, like a burpy movement, I guess, in your throat or whatever. Whenever I do that, all I could taste was onion. I could just taste these onion rings, and I think I'm off onion rings for at least a year now. Oh my God, honestly, it was horrible. I was sitting there in so much pain, like actually physically trying to massage my stomach, or, you know, just below my chest even, to be honest. It was that high up, just trying to get, like, I feel like there must have been a blockage or something. It was really worrying. It was really weird. Anyway, eventually, I also took some Rennies, and that worked wonders. I don't really have much experience with indigestion. It's not something I get much. So I know that you can take... Is Andrews that other thing? You can like put Andrews in water. Anyway, so I was sitting there in just so much pain for genuinely like 3 hours before I was like... You know, it was the kind of pain where you can't lay down all the time. You have to stand up and move. And it's just... Oh, my God. So, eventually I took those, and they actually did help a lot. So consider this a big advert for Rennies. Got back to sleep, and yeah, so I'm still a little bit unsettled right now. I haven't eaten or drank. I mean, I've had tiny little sips of water, like all day. The first thing I've got is in my hands right now, and it's a big cup of black coffee, which it's a mild laxative, right? So I'm running off in the middle of the video. But yeah, so oh my God, and the heat, it's still hot today. It's a lot cooler, and I knew I was going to be able to stream as far as the heat's concerned, but Jesus Christ. Alright, so anyway, there you go. Little insight into what's going on with me. I did have a comment saying the volume was a bit loud, by the way, so I'm going to turn it down a bit. Right, let's get into this. So, Absolution, Janthir Wilds, Mini X-Backs. What are your thoughts, Internet? So I'm just going to read through some of these, okay? Because, look, the thing is, I'm in kind of a reflective place. I know what you're all wondering immediately. Like, what do you think, WP, right? We don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. It's all about you, WP. No, I know we're all kind of wondering, like, how do we feel about mini X-Packs in general. I don't know for sure. Here's my gut. Okay, and I think I'm going to do something more formally reviewy, by the way, in the coming days. But my gut is this, that actually I think... And a lot of you guys aren't going to want to hear this, all right? You're not going to want to hear this because you're going to think I'm being a bootlicker or whatever. I think overall, I've really enjoyed Janthir Wilds. But it has obvious, like... it has a very obviously limited budget, right? The quality is not there. A lot of the story and the subject material here I liked. The quality isn't there. And then also I consider this patch, or rather, let me phrase this very differently. I consider the second half of this patch to almost be like its own thing. I think it's really bad. I think as we get through these comments, we're going to see some of you guys have been so articulate and you've been very, very good. I think we're going to see, and a lot of your comments have helped me to see this. The end of this was like, so I'm talking about story. Okay, sorry. Let me phrase this correctly. Obviously, there's very little budget. There's not as many new assets as I'd like. They don't feel like new adventures in the way that I'd like. The instances aren't as complex as maybe I'd like. The length is not there. The bulk is not there. Like there's a lot of budget issues with mini X-Packs. Okay, that's one thing. But I further criticize the end of Absolution as just badly written. Badly written. It's really messy. And I think some of you guys will articulate why that is very soon. So yeah, that's kind of my overall take on Absolution. I think, therefore, when I think... And again, this is just like first impressions. But I think, considering I generally like Janthir Wilds, I'm overall positive with Janthir Wilds. I'm more positive about Janthir Wilds than I was Secrets of the Obscure. They didn't stick the landing in terms of story material. But since I overall liked it, I am excited for Mini X-Pack 3. There's a temptation to still withhold our judgment, but someone's going to leave a comment like that. So let's just get into it, all right? Let's get into it. So here we go. The person with the pleasure of the first comment. I tried to go in reverse order, so earlier comments came out first. Hey, WP. This is just an interesting story beat. We talked about this on Discord last night, or the night before. It's brilliant. Mateus says, hey, WP. Do you remember the Eye of Janthir lurking in Eparch's throne room at the end of Secrets of the Obscure? Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? About a year ago, that's all that we could talk about. Well, Mabon has pretty much confirmed that he was using it to spy on us. Just before we said goodbye to Ghost Mabon, Commander says, we've managed this long, ask the Eparch. Isn't it just ask Eparch? Though you already seem well aware? ... Question mark? And Mabon replies, I have my ways. Dun dun dun. And then he left. Okay, yeah. I guess they explained the cliffhanger for the last expansion with that. That does, to me, suggest he has a scrying eye. Because remember, it's been confirmed there's more than one, right? He has a scrying eye still in his possession, and his ways are using that to poke around, see stuff that's going on in the mists. Two major things about this. Three major things. One, as an idea, that's really good. But two, why did they write it like this? Sorry. Right, okay, can I just say? I have my ways, ... Why bury it? Why be sneaky and understated about that moment? That's not an understated moment. That's a moment where he says, you know what, I saw you in the throne room with my eye. Be concrete about it. Why be concrete? First, so morons like me don't miss it on the first playthrough, right? Second of all, because it's a big beat and you've earned it. Guys, this is Janthir Wilds. What better way to end it all than with a satisfying conclusion to a mystery about the Eye of Janthir? Last year, we had that cliffhanger in that throne room scene. People were interested in it. And to have a nice, blunt, clear... Yeah, look, there you go. We've resolved that mystery. It was Mabon's eye. No one would have guessed that answer last year. They earned it. That's a good mystery and a good resolution. But because they've been understated about it, not only do people miss it, but I guess there's still potential for other answers to it to technically be true. I don't know. I think that they should have just been open about it. It's such a good moment. It's such a nice thing to be able to, at the end, go, aha! Now, I had someone say, yeah, but what about people who didn't see the eye in the throne room? Yeah, so what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you knew about the eye in the throne room already. If you did, you get this amazing eureka moment. If you didn't, then you just hear Mabon say, yeah, I had an eye of Janthir and I saw you there. It's the same input, it's the same information, basically, as what we got anyway, which is I have my ways. So I don't know, I think they really fumbled that. Like, what the fuck? I never in a million years would have framed that reveal the way that they did. And this isn't me being angry that I missed it, so to speak. This is, I just think that it would have been cool. It would have been a nice open bombshell thing. Now, so maybe they are leaving the idea that it was something else, but come on, man. Look, if there's a fault for the storytelling right now, it's that they probe and they don't really confirm enough. I don't know, is this a part of their ambitions to be Dark Souls-ish with their storytelling or whatever? Like there's a lot of things swirling around at the moment. It's really difficult to follow everything. You know, be nice and blunt and flat. It's like them eventually revealing who E is, but doing it in such a way that, oh, is it really? I don't know. Don't do that. Do something real for a second. They earned it. It's a good resolution, isn't it? It's a fun one. Even in retrospect, you know, you could go back and replay Secrets of the Obscure, and you'd see the eye, and you'd be like, oh, that is quite an interesting answer. Fucking Mabon, as a ghost, is still out there doing things. What a hero. You know, that's kind of fun. So this idea, so here's point 3. That's point 1 and 2. Point 3 is, okay, so what? Are they leaving the door open that it's something else? That's bad, but if they are, what is that something else? Maybe it's that that's not Mabon. The theories last year was that that was the greater Masat civilization. These guys that left Nyos as a shithole. These guys that exiled Manakaz et al. Right? Well, I say Manakaz, you get what I mean. That exiled a bunch of Masat. I shouldn't really say Manakaz because he's a lower generation, right? But can you guys hear in my voice? My throat is a little sore. I'm sure it's that I'm dehydrated to shit. Because not only have I not ate or drank much today, but it's been another hot, sweaty day. Painting you guys a real picture. So the theories last year were, okay, it's those guys, and that's a captivating answer. I still love that answer. So what? We're still just leaving the door open for that? I don't know. I don't know about all that. It's a good reveal. I wish that they had just... And it was right there. So anyway, there you go. So, as you can see, guys, I'm getting through the questions real quick. Oh, shit. Hold on. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button here. All right, next. So we got Racket Dude, who says... Who's quoting me at 3 hours, 36 minutes. That's the end of the last patch. And Frode was standing there talking to Ritlock. He's got a little theory. He says Frode is talking to the first Revenant. The person who has spirits from the mists talking in his head. See, it given some sense, given how Frode is leader of the Astral Ward and their connections to non-Tyrian entities, or just two powerful characters that seem rough. Yeah, I don't know, man. The second of those, surely. I was speculating about that quite closely, because that was one of the first odd pairings I saw, but reflecting on the actual ending, there's loads of odd pairings of characters there. I don't know whether there's really deep shit going on with all of them. I like that idea that it's about mist entities. Is Frode actually a Revenant? Was that revealed? I can't remember that small detail from Secrets of the Obscure, but maybe he is. It feels like that fits. So yeah, that's a cool idea. Next, we have Funeral Muse. Nice edgy name there. Loving that. Back when they announced the mini X-Pack format, I recall you mentioning you'd need to at least see 2 of them. At least see them do 2 of them before you could really know whether or what it was a good idea. You're paraphrasing me. Yeah, but you're getting it right. That is what I said. We've just wrapped up the second one. So I'm wondering how you're feeling about the format in general at this stage. Thanks, WP. Well, there's the lived-in experience, and then there's the ideal experience, okay? I think what I can judge is not mini X-Packs. What I can judge is how much money they're willing to spend on the game. And the caliber of writing that's going into the game. When I look at the end of Absolution, and it's messy, the end of we'll get to it, guys. It's very messy, the end of Absolution, right? It doesn't matter whether that was in a main expansion or a mini expansion or even whether it was well budgeted or not. It's just we can expect more of the same, right? So I'm not happy with that at all. That's detail work. That's I don't want to get too personal here or whatever, but that's talent in the writer's room. Well, let's not put it that way. That's logistics of writing a story among lots of people, right? Over a full year and all that shit. I don't know. The reality is, if they put a bunch more money into it, or if they gave us one of these every 2 years and it was twice as long, would it fix wonky writing? I don't know. To a certain extent, it would. So I wanna give you guys a hypothetical here. We've just had Secrets of the Obscure and Janthir Wilds together over 2 years, right? Now, 2 years is that classic World of Warcraft industry-leading idea of an expansion cycle, classically, right? We're not in that place with the industry anymore, but for a long time, right? And I remember very clearly when Guild Wars 2 came out, that was like the ballpark. That was what everyone thought was reasonable and expectable for expansions for MMOs. You know, like Guild Wars 2 was going to come out, and we would have 2 years, and then it would be the first big X-Pack. That was, and then Season 1 was announced instead, and we had all of this. Oh, I lit a starlit lantern, but that's the only one on the map, and I got an achievement for it. For old time's sake, that's funny. So anyway, so 2 years, one big box product, right? What I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of consumers would have accepted that. They would have been happy with that. Now, imagine that Arenanet had done that. They didn't sell you Secrets of the Obscure and Janthir Wild separately. It was one price for both, so you'd save like a tenner, first of all. It'd be slightly cheaper for you as a consumer. You would save a tenner, because it's 30 each year or 50 over the two, probably, right? They might not have sold so much that way, blah, 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 blah. For their economics, it's probably not as good, but whatever. My point is, imagine that you had the same amount of content. Look at what we've had here, right? Ugh. I'm not going to count Mistburned Barrens as a map. Sorry. I'm going to count this as one map. There's a big conversation there, I'm sure. All right, I'm counting that as a map. We get 1 map, 2 maps. I won't count Mount Barrier. 3 maps, 4 maps, 5, 6 maps. Plus, you know, the convergence endgame ideas, the raids that we've had, the fractals that we've had. When you pile it all on, it's pretty good, right? You compare that beat for just the Heart of Thorns areas, right? Or you compare that for, I mean, I suppose you have the season maps too. Then they're just never going to hit this height again, the POF height. They're just not. But anyway, my point is, it's a good amount of content they've put in. What I'm trying to worm my way to is this, right? If they weren't mini X-Packs, if it was just an X-Pack, and we imagine a blow for blow the same amount of content, right? Because they put a lot of content in over these 2 years. It's just a fact that they have. Mini X-Packs for actual quantity has been good. And what I'm trying to argue is if it wasn't a mini X-Pack, if it was a straight up X-Pack, not only would we have had, in theory, all of this content, but it probably would have been a bit more coherently made. Am I right to say that? You know, this has like 4 endings in it, right? There's the ending before we went to Nyos, and then the ending after Nyos, and then there's the ending after we went to Janthir Sintry, and then the ending after we did Barthanisos, right? There's 4 endings, and, you know, it's split over 24 months, and it's fragmented, right? And I really like, so you know, if I could relive this 2024 and 2025, and instead of having a release last year, just wait all until now, put it all out, I think we would have got a really good expansion out of it. The quantity would have been there for a single product, and I think the story would have been told more cohesively. I think they would have had more time for the small stories. I don't think they would have overreached, first of all. I think they would have let it be a bit thinner, which would have been to its benefit. And so in that way, I think I'm kind of against mini X-Packs, to realise that. to realize, fuck, man, if they just bulked it together, it would have been really coherent. And so yeah, it's interesting though, because, you know, I'm assuming there we'd get the same quantity, but maybe we wouldn't. You know, maybe the reason we got the quantity is because they're mini-X packs. And then there's all these other logistical real-world things to think about. Am I actually making that suggestion for real? Would people have waited, not just 2 years, guys, it's basically 3 years, right? Because we're at the end of the second now, before it's all said and done. Would people have waited 3 years after Giala Delve? Or more to the point, because I think fans would have, more to the point, would Arenanet not have gone bust getting that fucking money in earlier? Do you get what I mean? Like, 3 fucking years of just gem store updates. It might not have been viable at all, right? They had to start getting shit out. So, I don't know. There's a lot to say with mini-X packs. The other thing that's on my mind, right, is it's like they're close. They're close. To, you know, I maybe I do believe in the format. I just want them to spend a bit more money. You know, I get it. Project Tyria, Guild Wars 3, whatever's going on, right? I get it. Unreal Engine. It's amazing. I love it. But at the end of the day, this is not... Like, a lot of people, I think, will be angry with the writers or angry with the team or whatever, blah, blah. That's not my instinct. My instinct is to think, fuck, man, look, they're being asked to, you know... create some incredible art, and they've been given a couple of sticks and stones to do it. You know, I'm like, fuck, man, look how little they've got. In some ways, in other ways, in terms of the actual story detailing, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know what I think. I'll try to get this into some kind of coherent thought, and do sort of a casual review, a first impression style review of mini-X packs. That's kind of where I am with it right now. It's hard to know what is to blame or whatever, but I think you can make a good pattern. I think you can see the sort of ballpark that we're in. The thing that's on my mind is there's a lot of bias right now for me. I really like Janthir Wilds, but I know a lot of it's just because of the subject material. As soon as we go to subject material that I'm slightly less interested in, like if they do something completely out of left field again, like Nyos, right? Like Cryptis weren't a part of the lore. Nyos wasn't a part of the lore. Last year was an attempt for them to write new stuff, right? They wrote a lot of new stuff, and I don't know how much it hit. This year it was like leaning on more old stuff, and it hit for me, naturally. So how will I feel next year if they go back to new again? You know, do you get what I mean? Like, so we'll see. All right, anyway, here's Nightly Winter's reaction to this question. We've just wrapped up the second one. I'm wondering how you feel. Nightly Winter says, personally for me, 1 is a point, 2 is a direction, but 3 is the pattern. I think they improved really well from Secrets of the Obscure to Janthir Wilds based on player feedback, but they really haven't utilized mini expansions well enough in my opinion. Arenanet still treats mini X-packs as just a scaled down expansion, but I don't see any fun creativity with the concept. Hopefully the delay for the third will make it stand out from the first two, and they won't just try to check off things from the list that they need to add as content, but rather do something fun. Like, instead of 3 to 4 maps, they could release with just 2 massive maps that they keep adding stuff to as the expansion goes on. So with each patch, it feels like a small scavenger hunt to find what has changed with 2 zones. Or throw the commander into a solo adventure, or strand them somewhere as they try to look their way back with all the while the commander and player... We have to move Liz, guys, for this. Sorry, she's going to get in the way of the text. Go on, Liz, you can go over there for a minute. Throw the commander into a solo adventure, strand them somewhere as they try look their way back, all the while the commander and player are trying to figure out where the hell they ended up, while they struggle to survive without any allies. Both these ideas make better use of limited resources, and they have instead kept hammering the same expansion formula whilst clearly struggling to deliver in a meaningful way. Like, I'm actually still kind of bummed we didn't get strikes this expansion. Yeah, so they, you know, we got raids this year, but we didn't get strikes this year. You know, and you want both or whatever. Again, I think if you imagine they both came out together in just a 2-year window, or 3 if you want to take it by its very end point, it was pretty good for endgame stuff, you know, especially considering there were LMs both of those years, right? To me, that's a bit of a muddy response. This shit about... Sorry, not shit. This stuff about the commander going solo, blah, blah, blah. That's really just a story concept, isn't it? That doesn't say anything about implementation. strand the commander away from their friends and allies, do something totally fresh and new. Fine, but you know, that's that could be done at any budget scale, and that could be done at any like development time span, right? Like that's a different conversation, really. Like, as for maps as well, I'm not sure I'm convinced. I think just having 2 maps for the entire mini X pack that slowly expand sounds awful. It's not exciting to me. Because I think it's kind of arbitrary. What I think is arbitrary, right, is map count. Does it really matter? Okay, here's my question to you. Does it really matter that Drizzlewood, it's annoying not having been to all these places, is all 1 map instead of effectively 2? Yes, there's like a rectangular wall that they'd have to obscure, but does it really matter that much? There's certain ticky-tacky details about the meta event design that require a continuous map, right? But it's not really, it doesn't really matter that much. Just as it doesn't matter that much that they split this one, right? And that's why I'm kind of not counting it as 2. Does it really matter? Like, Bureau Marches is a very good example of, I mean, it really doesn't matter. There's a wall there in the art, right? In the environment art, there's a giant wall. The events on the right-hand side of the map have nothing to do with the events on the left-hand side. You know, like, it's arbitrary. The only thing that matters to me is getting to go to lots of places of Tyria. Here's what I don't want. I don't want to be told that for the entirety of next year, we're on this island. I want some scope. I want to go to different places. Janthir Wilds I quite like. I got to go to the Delta, which I was very happy with. I got to go to the Janthir Isles, and I got to go to Barvanisos. They're 3 distinct areas of the world map. They're all in the general same principal region, right? And they're bound together. But they're distinct. I feel like I got to explore. Now, did they have the assets to really do these things as amazing as, say, the opening of POF? No, right? So that's still a conversation. But I like that we got at least this, right? You're telling me... So what I don't like about the idea of just a full year, 1 mini X pack that just expands slightly on the borders of the same map. I don't know what that gains us in any way. If it's all arbitrary, then fuck it. Put it in a new cell and plonk that cell somewhere interesting. And I don't think that's too superficial. I think that opens them up creatively, right? Like they can talk about different societies and they can do different like asset sets. So I'm much more of a globetrotter, I think. I'm much more looking for adventure in this game, so I want it to cover a wide area. If we get like a deep sea dragon, not deep sea dragon, wow, like a deep sea under the ocean type experience, you know, I would want a map on the Mitani Keys, very water focused, but very beach and stuff. And I'd want a deep sea map, right? And I want to feel like I'm out in the fucking deep sea. I don't want to feel like we've just expanded slightly off the Mitani Keys, you know? And then I'd want like a Battle Isles map, right? So I think that 3 map minimum, I think that's in place for me. The fact that this got split didn't really mean anything in retrospect, I think. Mount Barrior's interesting too. I think this is way cooler that this was actually somewhere on Tyria than the Convergence last year. So Convergence is operating in new places. I think it's awesome as well. So there you go. So anyway, just some thoughts there about... and it's interesting, the original question from Funeral Muse is about mini X-Backs, and then the response from Lightly Winter is very like map focused. But to me, that's not part and parcel of the same thing necessarily. Anyway, let's keep moving. So next one. So I'm gonna have a sip of this coffee here. Ready? Since it's been half an hour already. Okay, so we got Osiris334, and it's getting a little bit cold. He's quoting me at some point around 3 hours, so again, that's going to be near the end again, isn't it? Sorry, in live chat, Anon Nipele says they brought back big jumping puzzles in this map. 10 points for that. I'm excited. We have to play that for sure. WP, I want maps all over the globe in one expansion. Also, WP, why don't we have scenes where we travel in the interim between maps? Yeah, I don't think that that's too much to ask. It's not that much to have me, you know, Season 3 style, go to the submarine dock and actually get on at Ratasum and actually get on a submarine, And that's what took me to Draconis Mons. That's what they did in Season 3, and I applaud that. You know, a cutscene of essentially just, you know, an airship. It was a Bink video of an airship at like 720p flying through with the Shiver Peaks in the background and whatever. Yes, the opening instance was quite elaborately scripted and stuff. I think that the airship scene here was... I'm not asking for content in all that shit. I'm not saying give me a massive globe-trotting adventure where there's content in all of it and make it in 1 year. But yeah, at my heart, that's what I look for in this game. I look for adventure, and it really dismays me when we just get portaled around. I think it's awful. I think it's especially awful when it's happening in the middle of the action, like how we got teleported to Livia in the middle of Absolution this patch. Anyway, right, back to this. So as Iris says, maybe now that Guild Wars 2 has every major feature for MMOs, then they can give more resources to story content. However, I do think for the do some of everything model to work, they need to flex the focus of each expansion. They should treat them like a pendulum. One expansion is lighter story, but we know it's set up, but gets access to features or overhauls. The next is heavy on story content, but doesn't cure well on bug fixes. Third thought along those lines, maybe the lack of resources is the job of the studio heads to handle. They should be pushing NCSoft for larger budgets, either because potential player gains or concern of player doubts, but especially if they're working on another title again. I'm actually excited for the next expac because I'm really curious what changes will be made. A retrospective post would be wonderful. You got to be careful with that, by the way. There will always be changes. You want to base your excitement on something else. Otherwise, you'll just be infinitely trapped in that loop, right? And he gets a response from this guy, Chillzone, who left a lot of, like, dodgy fucking comments. This is one of them. He says, I'm 99% sure that the next expansion pack will be the last one. In Guild Wars 1, they also threw bones at us, only to announce Guild Wars 2 later. That's complete horseshit. That is a complete lie, a total fabrication, based on nothing. That is not what happened with Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 1, they were doing yearly releases, was the idea, with the campaigns. In fact, they did just 6 months turnaround with Nightfall, but let's get away from that for a second. We were all expecting Utopia. We were fully in the content engine. Nightfall was not fucking bones. Nightfall was like one of the best products they ever made, especially reviewed contemporarily, right? Nightfall wasn't bones. We were in the middle of everything. We thought we were getting Utopia, and then they came out with an article and said, actually, guys, we're going to do a sequel. And we're going to do a big expansion leading you into that sequel. And we had Eye of the North, which was also not bones. Then, as Guild Wars 2 dev continued along for longer than they expected, they were angling around 2008 release originally. They ended up with 2012. While it was going longer than they expected, then they started doing the equivalent of Guild Wars 1 Living World, which you could then maybe describe as bones. But in no way does that world reflect what you said. In Guild Wars 1, they threw bones at us only to announce Guild Wars 2 years later. It's nonsense. I honestly, it really aggravates me. People just typing shit. I mean, what are you doing? Just guessing the facts? I mean, what? Insane. Anyway, right, back to the main body text. I think the issue that I have with what you're saying here is you're imagining like this idealized world where talent can everyone has the same capability to do everything. So like, I mean at the studio, right? So treat it like a pendulum. One expansion is lighter in the story and the next is heavier. But hold on, they have a certain amount of writers. So on the year when the pendulum has swung away, what are you asking? You're asking half that team to just what? Pick their asses and just chill? That's vacation year for those guys. They're not doing anything. No, you're going to put everyone to use, right? What are you going to do? Tell them go contract for other studios because the pendulum isn't for the story that year? No, they have a story team that's going to do about the same amount of story each time, right? And the same vice versa when we talk about features and overhauls. They've got so many devs. So what, 1 year? Yeah, you don't have to do anything this year. Next year, we're going to crunch you to fuck and ask you to do 3 overhauls at once. And it doesn't work that way. It's going to be even keel, whatever they set on. I also just, even if it did work that way, I don't know whether I really want that. One other thing I didn't mention with the reviews of Mini X packs. Okay, this is something I am still very curious about with Mini X Pack 3. I think I have a good sense of what we're going to get for map exploration and storytelling. And it's not at the bar that I want. Okay, for Mini X packs, it's not. However, for features I feel like I don't know what the bar is for features. I was a big fan, retrospectively, certainly, of the era of Guild Wars where they were experimental with fundamental design. We did get feature packs. We got UI initiatives. We got significant changes to the combat system. All that went away. And I can see why, because they were risky and some people didn't like that stuff, and they probably have metrics that showed people got burned. And Christ, Stellaris 4.0, if you're following that with me at the moment, is a really good example of why you don't want to keep fucking with things too much, when, especially inexpertly. But I miss that. I think features are really big, okay? And so with Secrets of the Obscure, we had the Wizard's Vault. With Janthir Wilds, what did we have? There was something. What did they do this year? What was like the big feature improvement? We had a new legendary. The weapons were done much better this year, but that's not really like a new feature thing. The homestead, maybe? Counts? I guess the homestead is sort of the big feature. I mean, that's a funny thing, because I've really barely touched it. I guess the homestead, right? They've done like a big thing each year, but still, I feel like it's not enough examples. I want to see what they do next year. You know, like, the thing as well, right, is at the start of this year, I did a video on what I'd like to see from feature pack stuff. Like, I talked a bunch about squad UI, I talked about LFG, I talked about reward incentives. I did, what was it, 10 points on the list? Something like that? 12, maybe? Big things that I think could be really beneficial to Guild Wars. They're all feature pack style updates. I want to see stuff like that. So I'm very curious about that with the next mini X pack. And I'm one thing that I think I am so far satisfied with is there are feature things coming. There are feature things happening. When they kind of wore off for years. You didn't see shit like the Golden Age, right? The Season 3, POF, Season 4 arc didn't really do much of that stuff. It just didn't. So that's a win that mini X-Packs have. If next year there's really not that much that's going on in terms of reward schemes and all that kind of shit, or just some big cool ideas, I think I'll be disappointed. This idea that, oh, they've done all the big features now, so they have more resources. Having done all the big features doesn't mean they invent more story, people. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think as well, like, Arenanet are quite bad, to my mind, at thinking long term. So this year they gave us housing, right, with the homestead. Did they do it in a way that making more homesteads isn't that bad? You know, the idea is next mini X-Pack we get a homestead. I think we're all pretty much certain of that, right? And the hope is that that doesn't take too many resources, because homesteads are already a feature. The design has already been done. So there are savings next year. But the thing is, there's a lot of weird little details about homesteads that might be a pain in the ass to re-implement for another homestead somewhere else. Like, how do the masteries and all that stuff work? Like, I don't know whether they really thought about it long term. And so they might get fucked next year. We assume, oh, they've got homesteads, so now that's not on the list. But I'm a little bit worried that it is still like going to be a massive drain every new homestead they do. And there's a lot of stuff like that. You know, elite specs are probably the poster child for what I'm trying to... depiction of what I'm trying to express there. So we'll see. Yeah. Just a bit more mini X-Pack review there. Next. Oh, I don't know why I turned it off. All I have to do is click the button. Angels 2 Online. Alright, we're not going to get a big discussion out of this one. Livia has the same immortality logic as Gollum. Oh, I get it now. Yeah, so look, when we get into the details of the story... So yesterday I was talking about... Well, in the last part I was talking about how... So she announces at the end of Season 3, I use the scepter to prolong my life. But she doesn't need to hold the scepter the entire time, I guess, right? It's like Gollum with a run ring. He lost it for long periods of time, but he was all right. It is. It's the Gollum. It's exactly like Gollum. Livia is Gollum. Brilliant. Okay, next we got Segment YT. I'd like to offer some ideas I keep in my head about Absolution's story outcomes. All right, here we go. Number 1. Sorry, I'm trying to get a balance here between live chat and these comments, and I'm doing really badly. Let me look at live chat here. Mike says, do they integrate the new homestead into the story? Do they then have to mess about with those instances and waste time rehabbing the wayfind? Yeah, exactly. The story side of it's one thing, but just like look at the homestead, all the little like buildings and things and NPCs that have to be there. And I'm very curious about how the mastery would work, crossing over multiple. I assume it would be like fishing, right? Where you need to own EOD, but if you do, you get fishing. And to be honest, I think that's quite smart. I know if we're looking at Guild Wars 2 as the most budgetary possible game, it's not a good thing for you. But I kind of like the idea that you unlock more facets of mini X-Packs if you own other things. So EOD unlocked the fishing facet for these recent X-Packs, and they continue to maintain it, which is good. Janthir Wilds is going to be like that, but for homesteading, I assume. So I don't know. The devil's in the details, and I haven't really worked out the details. You want a bee-themed legendary with honey and all? Yeah, the backpack's really weird, right? A bee-themed thing would have been amazing and on-brand for this X-Pack, but it's like an End of Dragons thing, isn't it? Anyway, I haven't really talked about the new legendary very much. Right, so I'd like to offer some ideas I keep in my head about Absolution's story outcomes. 1. Secrets of the Obscure and Janthir Wild's stories should have been multiple expansions. In Secrets of the Obscure, we should only have dealt with the Cryptis invasion on Tyria, with Norris being the big finale. Then, next expansion, we should have been on our journey through Nyos and dealing with the Midnight King. Only then in the 3rd expansion, the story should move to Massar and Titans in Lowland Shore, where discovering Ura, Decima and Greer should have been the finale. And only then, in expansion 4, we are moving to Barvanisos and the Realm of Torment. I guess I'll do you point for point here. Look, I get your impulse there, because you want justice to these stories. You feel like these stories are too complex, too big, and you want more justice for them. Because there are so many, like, loose ends or things that could have been expanded on. It would have been nice to know the cast for more time, you know, that we're moving too fast through the material. I get it. I get that that's your impulse for saying all of that. And in all those respects, I agree. The thing is, though, like, I just wonder to myself, what you're proposing there, saying an expansion each time, fine. But we're also talking about 4 years to get through that subject material. And I just wonder if people will buy that. I guess they will, right? Because if it doesn't matter what the subject material is. It just matters if it's well told. It's all about the execution. It needs to be well told. And that means not overreaching. I mean, the other thing is, though, like, you're coming at it from a, like a definitive posthumous perspective, right? You're, like, looking back at the story they told and assuming that has to be the story. But look, if we're going to do a do-over, if we're going to change things, you have to understand, they're just writing, they're just coming up with this as they go along. They don't have to do any of it. They didn't have to write the Titans. They didn't have to write Norris or the Realm of, or Nyos or any of that shit. A whole expansion in Nyos is an interesting one, because either that's going to be really good, because now we can give time to Ramses, and now we can give time to have truly, like, fucked up demons, but eventually humanize them and it doesn't come off as weird. You know, it would either be very good, or it would double down on everything that felt awful last year. So it's kind of funny to think in that way, right? So I don't know. I get your impulse to say all of that, but the main overstuffing as far as Janthir Wilds is concerned is the Foundry scene at the end. They really shouldn't have gone for the Foundry scene if they couldn't. This patch was too big. I'll tell you what, if I could do a do-over of Janthir Wilds, I would fuck the Mistburned Barons. This is a great patch with a lot of stuff and a lot of world building and detail, but it all could have been within Barvanisos. Barvanisos, city eaten by a Titan, big focus, and then the last patch would have just been on the same map. I wouldn't have had 2 maps. It just would have been Barvanisos again, not even necessarily a map expansion, but all the focus is on the actual story instances, and that Foundry scene is really epic. And you know what? Maybe spin a strike mission out of it as well. The thing is, they decided not to do strike missions, blah, 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 I don't know. Idea 2. My second idea is that Isgaran and company And the reason I say spin a strike mission out of it is because, again, like, I'm not in favor of spending fuck tons of time and money and effort on story instances that then don't get to be reused. When you're going to go big on a story instance, I like to see it be reused at least somewhere as a part of endgame. Somewhere. Have it as a convergence. Have it as a fractal. Have it as a raid. Those are the 3 big ones, right, at this point. Or a strike mission. Just pick one, at least. Picking all of them, I don't know. Oh, and then there's meta events, too. With Greer, Ura, and Decima, they kind of did all 3. They quadruple dipped a lot of the time. Or, sorry, triple dipped. And that hasn't worked this year. I don't think we'll see them do that again, guys. I don't think we'll see triple dipping. My second idea is that Isgaran and company are used to open Tyria for huge invasions. Paetha and Mabon aren't good guys, but help each other to make the Wizards' Court vulnerable. They keep us busy while building their own forces in the mists. They're harbingers of Menzies, and the final expansion will be the Shadow Army invasion on Tyria, and potentially the end of the world again. Yeah, look, on that last note, end of the world. Oh, man. Let me ask... I'll address that last point in this way, right? Let me ask you guys a question. I'm talking about the comics, Marvel comics, okay? Should the Avengers no longer face end-of-the-world threats because it's been done before? Well, obviously, no, that's nonsense, right? There's a certain expectation from that kind of storytelling. There's a certain expectation of the threats that you want to see the Avengers face. You want the free state of the universe, the multiverse, the whatever, right? It's sort of part and parcel for the genre, isn't it? To face world-ending threats. Is it tropey? Is it predictable? Is it boring eventually? I mean, for me, yes, and I'm not a big comic book reader. I'm not a comic book reader at all. But I wouldn't accuse the genre of making a mistake for doing it over and over. And that's how I view Guild Wars 2. At the end of the day, I'm not like... To me, it's a bit boring and predictable, and I'd like smaller scale conflicts, and I think that was a victory for Janthir Wilds. But I'm not going to particularly hold it against Guild Wars if it's a world-ending threat. I think that's a dangerous place for us to go. To say it's just flat-out shit because there's a world-ending threat. Or a major threat, a nation-ending threat, at least, or whatever. Like, there's going to be some scale to the conflict, ultimately, right? Janthir Wilds, I think, actually rode the line perfectly. The idea of unchecked titans rampaging across Tyria, even if it's only 3 of them, it's cool, you know, it's scary. There's a reason for us to act. And it was a big enough reason. And that's it, you know. Actually, I think Janthir Wilds did it really well. I'm so happy that... Like, I hated Season 3 squeezing the war in Kryta into a single episode, right? I hated Icebrood Saga for squeezing the death of Primordus in at the same time. You can argue it was a part of a grander plan, but the grander plan was overstuffed. Like, I don't think... with the exception of the Foundry stuff and actual, like, details in this patch, I think they hit it really well with Janthir Wilds. And I think they did very good, and I'd like to see more of that. So, I don't know. And then finally... Oh, sorry, hold on, we're in a fight. Look, guys. Real content. Combat. It's so easy here at the end of the road as well to forget how good these weapons are, but I do think they were good. And thirdly, my third theory... sorry. So I just went on that tiny bit at the end there. So this overall idea... What do you mean idea? Is that your theory about what's going on? Or just what you would rather they had done? You would rather it turned out Paetha was bad. The thing is, I didn't want Paetha to be bad for bad's sake. I wanted Paetha to be bad because she was self-interested. Because she was a demon. And it's that, do you know what? I'm not going to try and waffle this out. I'm going to Google it. What's that parable? The parable about the scorpion and the frog. You guys heard about the scorpion and the frog? I'm sure you have. I'm going to read it. A scorpion wants to cross a river, but cannot swim. Yeah, look, they've even got a little picture on Wiki for you all. Here you go. Is everybody ready for story time? Okay, I'm trying to save an image. And Chrome is being a bitch. Yeah, there we go. Alright, here we go. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. I've built this up way too much now. Wait, OBS, you don't like WebP? Really? No, this is a PNG. A lot of people hate WebP because it's, like, incompatible with a lot of stuff. But, I'm alright with it. Vegas accepts it, at least. Alright, here we go, guys. Ready? This is what I wanted Paitha to be, ultimately. A scorpion wants to cross a river, but cannot swim. So, it asks a frog to carry it across. The frog hesitates, afraid that the scorpion might sting it. But the scorpion promises not to, pointing out that it would drown if it killed the frog in the middle of the river. The frog considers this argument sensible and agrees to transport the scorpion. Midway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog anyway, dooming them both. The dying frog asks the scorpion why it stung, despite knowing the consequence, to which the scorpion replies, "I am sorry, but I couldn't help myself. It's my character." So, the first early known appearances of that fable, according to Wiki, are from a 1933 Russian novel called The German Quarter by Lev Nitterberg. Alright, we won't get into that. Anyway, that's what I wanted the Paitha story to be. It's all about, like, their instinct, their base nature as demons, and how they're fighting against it. And honestly, a lot of the Epoch dialogue is really good. Talking about the inevitability of consumption being a part of their society, how, you know, grabbing power and consuming power, and like this kind of like nasty, fucked up way of living. That's who they are. That's what they are. And that's really novel, and that's a cool insight into a different kind of society, different kind of life form. We're dealing with demons, and Epoch embodies a really interesting idea. And I say linger in that space. What they did was they just said, no, they're just oppressed, and you can save anybody, and you can change everything. And really, we should love the Cryptis. Look, Paitha's good. No, I wanted Paitha to be the Scorpion. That's what I wanted from that story. And they didn't do it. And do you see what I mean? With shit like this, it's like, it's not... It doesn't matter whether they produced that expansion over 3 years with a massive budget, or they crammed it out in 6 months with a tiny one. At the end of the day, that's the kind of storytelling they're interested in. And it's not the kind of storytelling I'm so interested in. So whatever. Anyway, but yeah, so Paitha isn't good, but it's because she's being manipulated. She's a harbinger of Menzies. Also meh, okay, to me, like... I'm captivated about Paitha not being good because she's a scorpion. Not because Menzies is pulling her strings. I mean, what is that story? We did that already. That's the fortune teller story, right? That's Abaddon manipulating the fortune teller, or Vizirkiel Bron. I don't really believe in it. But you know, it's an idea. Okay, so let's move on to 3. Sorry, there's more I could say, but I don't want to spend too long. My third theory explains why they keep rushing the story, and it's a follow-up from the previous idea. We cannot ignore Guild Wars 3 topic with this one. I think this is the same situation as we had rushing through Dragon Lore with Icebrood Saga and End of Dragons. Guild Wars 3 is soon to be announced, and though these mini X-Packs... Sorry, through these mini X-Packs, they are closing forgotten lore bits and put pawns into places to prepare the world for Guild Wars 3 events. Kind of like they wanted to do Guild Wars Beyond in the past, but now they're speeding up to not cut the project midway. I don't believe in this. Sorry, I don't. First of all, that's not what they did with Guild Wars 1 Beyond. With the revelation of Guild Wars 2, here's what they did. They had a fully existing con world in the middle of whatever stories it was in the middle of, and with ideas of Utopia. And they said, fuck it. They didn't put any content in to change anything. They just released an article and said, okay, 250 years are going to pass. Here's all the crazy changes. That's what they did. That was the first thing they did. Then you had Eye of the North that started leading things up. So you can look at mini X-Packs, I guess, as kind of like Eye of the North. But I don't think... What I'm trying to argue here is I don't think much groundwork needs to be done in Guild Wars 2. They can kind of just jump, you know, and let the passage of fictional time fill in the gaps for you, or leave mysteries as they were. Can I remind you all right, it's like 99% sure that we were going to move into like a Guild Wars 3-esque scenario at the end of Season 4. With the big layoffs and shit, guys. Like, they were looking to close Guild Wars 2 down or move on to the next project or whatever at the end of Season 4. That's like in the middle of the Elder Dragon arc. And they were happy to do that. You know, so I don't believe in this. This again is why I think Project Tyria somewhere else in the same universe, but not on Tyria, right? And I get the irony of me talking about Project Tyria and it's not even about Tyria to me. That's why it's so good, because it's so liberating for them. Pick and choose any law, any societies you like, any functions of the world building that you like. And that makes sense to me. Doing mini-X packs about Mist's travel and Mist defenders and interdimensional elements to then introduce a Guild Wars 3 that is somewhere else in the Mists. That's sweet. That's brilliant. That works perfectly. Introduces the concept. But they don't have to tie anything down. And what I'd say as well is if they do them in separate settings, Guild Wars 2 doesn't have to worry about anything. Like the official line, right? Okay, seriously. I think people just don't take this seriously. They have said they're not giving up on Guild Wars 2. They're not going anywhere with Guild Wars 2. Even if a Project Tyria is being made right now and eventually releases, I seriously do believe they will keep making shit for this game. I do not believe they will cannibalize their audience. They are on the record reflecting on the state of Guild Wars 1 as saying it was a mistake to not keep going with this game. It's a different... Guild Wars 1 was a different enough skill system, a different enough structure. It was a CRPG, not an MMORPG, whatever. Looking back, the modern studio is on the record publicly as saying, hey, maybe we could have kept going with Guild Wars 1. And what? You think they're going to say that and then they're going to do the exact same thing with Guild Wars 2? No, listen, when the modern game director says, no, we're all engines on Guild Wars 2, I believe him. I do. Maybe I'm an idiot for that. Maybe you're a cynic or whatever. And look, there's clearly a thing about resources and shit like that, right? Guild Wars 2 is currently suffering at the hands of Project Tyria because it doesn't have the full weight of the studio, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get all of that, right? But once Project Tyria is out, I do think they will keep going with this game. So, look, I just think set Project Tyria, a different area of time, different area of space, the Mists, and potentially a different area in time, if you like. It can be separate, it can be its own stories, and it's not contaminating this. So let me just reread your point 3 again. You think they're rushing through stuff, they're trying to close lore bits, blah, blah. No, I don't think they are. I think they have near free reign to do whatever the fuck they want. Just sort of stay around the idea of the Mists so that people will be accepting of Project Tyria. I think that they'll just continue to tell stories in both games and develop both games, at least for a while. And it's not unheard of in the industry. GGG are doing it with PoE at the moment, right? People were cynics about that, but there it is. I don't know other areas of MMOs too well. I mean, you could look at WoW Retail and Classic. Is RuneScape and is RS3 and Classic a similar situation? I don't know. I mean, when we did about Classic editions, mate. All right, what about EverQuest? Doesn't EverQuest still get updates as well as EverQuest 2? They were going to do EverQuest Next at one point, remember? And there was no cannibalization idea there. So yeah, I think right now, I believe, you could call me a fool, I do believe that they're not going to cannibalize. And I don't think it's like Icebrood Saga, where they're kind of just getting shit out of the way. And finally, right, even if we did believe all of that, why would they feel the need to end a bunch of mysteries just to make way for Project Tyria? What? Why aren't they valid in the third game? They didn't have to do the Scepter of War here, just because they were doing a third game. That could be a mystery resolved in the third game. One of the only mysteries I really think that they'd have to do is E. If we assume another big time jump, like a 250, 500-year time jump or some shit, probably really does fit to finish the E mystery within Guild Wars 2 rather than a third addition to the franchise. But I mean, even that, I can see an argument. It's just left as a mystery and then, ooh, like look at Avinia. Avinia was hinted at here in Absolution. Avinia is a Guild Wars 1 mystery. Born about from lack of budget from the Beyond stuff, to be honest, but still. Avinia is a Guild Wars 1 mystery. And they're playing it with it in the sequel, so I don't think they need to knock things off. There you go. There's my fairly exhaustive response to all of that. There you go. FF11 and 14. 11 still gets updates, granted small ones. Yeah, and I would advocate for Guild Wars 1 updates, which it does, but let's be real. Like, content updates. I would advocate for that. Right here today. Utopia, Guild Wars 1. Let's fucking do it. I thought it was Easgaren. No, the new theory is it's that turquoise head Norn or whatever, right? Alright. FF11 is basically maintenance mode, please, says Red Shanks. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I just read that in chat there. I don't really want to talk about things I don't know. I don't know how much it gets. WoW Classic Season of Discovery is actually a great example. They're adding new stuff to Classic, setting up lore in the current WoW expansions. You know, one of the only things we know about what they're making is it's Unreal, right? And being in the midst of an Unreal remaster of Oblivion, I can't help but think, what if Project Tyria all along was just Guild Wars 1? Guild Wars 1 Classic, but with new content, just like Season of Discovery. Only on WP can we be privileged to have our ideas brought up and roasted real time for 3 hours. Oh, hold on, I don't think I roasted it. There was a comment the other day where someone said, oh, I'm really glad my comment didn't get interrogated. I'm not interrogating, we're just discussing. I didn't want to roast this. I didn't think that was a roasting. I think Segment's dropped a lot of cool comments over these recent videos. We've read a few of them. I just disagree on some areas of those. Anyway, right, Kairos. Anambiz says, I honestly don't think it would work. Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm a bit cynical that it would work too. I'm a Guild Wars 1 fan, so I'm not objective about actually how great that genre is, right? The Guild Wars 1 genre, let's call it. There's a lot of wonky elements to it that I don't know whether modern audiences would play. And unlike RuneScape, and unlike WoW, those were huge platforms with lots of nerdy fans that would go back, and they were basically guaranteed successes as far as their budgets were concerned, because they had such a fat baseline of oldies, basically. Guild Wars is a bit different. Guild Wars, you know, Guild Wars 1, we're a long way from the Guild Wars 1 heyday at this point. A long way. And I don't think that baseline is as big. You know, we've always been a bit of an underdog here. Mostly because this game, this franchise, has its roots in being countercultural to MMOs in general, right? And that came at a cost of the audience. Alright, anyway, so moving on. Kairos says, if I told you at the start of Janthir Wilds that the final boss of the expansion will be 3 random white mantle that we fight in the realm of torment, you wouldn't believe me. You would think I'm joking. And he got a response that says, wish there was a fight with the general of the Shadow Army at the end, after, just as the hero is saying goodbye to Mabon. Imagine a hectic fight as you try to defeat a servant of Menzies. I don't know the spelling. Yeah, you got it. While Mabon is getting a spell ready to close the gate, so the general can't get through the gate to consume the giant Titan's heart or Tyrian magic. Yeah, look, I mean, it's awful. The thing is, right, if you told me that the final boss of the next expansion will be 3 white mantle in the realm of torment, I think I'd geek out. I'd be like, whoa, what the fuck, really? But the reason I'd geek out is because of that use of final boss. I'd be thinking of the Balthazar fight. I'd be thinking about, for all its failings, Dragonstorm has the spectacle, right? I'd be thinking about, you know, any of the Dragon X maps that have been out there. I'd be thinking about Eparch's Throne Room. I'd be expecting like a cool fight and a cool enemy. But this was a cool area, I guess. But the issue was the enemies. They're not really bosses, are they? They're just White Mantle models. And they were a little bit trickier to fight. You know what I was actually wondering about is checking my combat log while I was fighting them to see if they have any cool names. You know, like the Teeth of Morgemoth style thing. But yeah, I think I would have been excited by that premise. But it's because I would have imagined like a badass scene, but we didn't get the badass scene. Do you guys see what I mean? Like, I really kind of don't believe that the subject material matters much as long as it's well told. The subject material matters when it's not well told and they can lean on it, you know? So like Janthir Wilds I've liked this story overall. It might not be that great. It might be just that I'm blinded because it's White Mantle and it's Saul and shit. Well, like when I think about those side adventures we did at the release of Secrets of the Obscure, where we had all that Saul stuff going on. Oh my god, and learning that what Caudicus did when he came up here. Remember, that was a throwaway line from Canark in Season 3, and it got spun into a big story this expansion. All that shit was really good. I had so much fun. But maybe it's just because it's that subject material. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, real whiff of an ending. So then Racket Dude here says, so, we went to Janthir, but do we know anything more about the Eye of Janthir? Think there needed to be a Shadow Army General of sorts in the final story, just as the hero was going to jump through the portal. Could have been the hero, fight them off, just as Mabon is trying to close the portal. Again, like, you don't need a Shadow Army General, you just need these White Mantle, like these Proto-Titans or whatever, to be badass looking and interesting. We don't even need a Shadow Army General. We just need to do something fun with the mechanics and the fights, right? And put some spectacle in there. So yeah, we went to Janthir, but do we know anything more about the Eye of Janthir? Yeah, they were very thin on that. Look, I'm not going to accuse Janthir Wilds as being a total failure for world building. I think they did really good with the Massart. We got all these glimpses into their rituals and their lives, and the mixed characters they had there. They weren't all evil. They were deeply thoughtful. I think the world building for the Massart was really good this expansion. Could it have done with more ticky-tacky details about the Eye of Janthir? Yes. I'm not too sad that it didn't, but it should have really, because, what did we know about Janthir from the start of this game's lore? Way back at Prophecies. Right, this world map, guys, that you're looking at, it didn't look like this. You didn't see Janthir or Janthir Bay or any of this shit, certainly. You couldn't even see north of the Giant's Basin. It was this. This is the Prophecies map. Let me see if I can get it just right. It's probably like... It's like that. That was it. Seriously. You didn't see it all the way down to Alona. You didn't see really far to the right. You didn't see the west of the Horn. You didn't see any of this shit up here. Seriously. And so when we heard about Janthir and the Eye of Janthir when we're doing the White Mantle story and shit, it's like, what is that? Years later, over a decade later, we get an expansion named after it, and then it didn't really touch on the Eye in any way. I think if I had been in the writer's room, I would have been pushing for more about the Eye itself. Just because it feels neat and correct to have that be a bigger function of the plot, right? And then, yeah, and then Mabon doesn't even put a fine point on it in that final fucking sentence. I mean, it's crazy. They really should have put a point on it at the end there, that was his eye last year. At least that. And I mean, there was a bit, right? They talked about the forging of scrying eyes and stuff somewhere over this Secrets of the Obscure Janthir Wilds era. But, more to the fore would have probably been better, I think. So there you go. So, as much as I really like the idea of Menzies pulling strings and manipulating the White Mantle into opening the Mist Gate... Okay, so there's a bit of a question. We're going to see a couple of comments here, guys. There's a question, is Menzies even relevant? Now, I just want to say, I think Menzies is relevant. I think they are hinting at Menzies stuff, and I'll explain as we go through these comments. And, most members of the community have been talking about Menzies relentlessly, frankly, since even the last patch, right? It's not even based on shit going on in this patch. It's since we saw, what was keeping the door closed, and this idea that it's divine thing with the Mist Gate and blah, 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 blah. But there is an idea, maybe there's no Menzies, and I think that it's a really good thing to talk about. Because in a lot of ways, Menzies kind of breaks the story. So here, as much as I really like the idea of Menzies pulling strings, manipulating the White Mantle into opening the Mist Gate, I feel like it would make the story even worse in a subtle way if it's true. If Svias wasn't the one whispering to the 3 White Mantle, then what part did that Giga Titan play in the story? It wasn't responsible for the opening of the Mist Gate, because we're suggesting that might have been Menzies. It didn't via the White Mantle. It didn't create the 3 Titans, because in theories Menzies was forging those. It wasn't responsible for the Mist Burn. The gate itself leaks Mist Burn, as we learned last patch. The only thing relevant to it was that the gate was anchored to it, which was a passive thing. So in this theory, we've had this Titan who stayed interior, and what did it do in the 200 years after Mabon left it be? Nothing. It just became one with Barvanisos and stayed passive. If we take the Menzies theory, defeating Svias in the story would have been perfectly fine. The gate would have stayed anchored because of the 3 white mantle, the Titan crisis in base Janthir Wild would still have existed, and the storyline could have played out literally the same, except the Mabon bit. But if Svias didn't open the gate and cause the Titan crisis, what interesting plot do we have about Mabon? He just showed mercy to a Titan, and there would have been none of his fault since that Titan did nothing anyway. So as much as I want to believe the Menzies theory, and I think it's a brilliant idea to have the commander say something that we learn isn't true. The commander said twice that it was Svias manipulating the White Mantle. I really don't believe Arenanet would write a story like this. It's not to say the Menzies connection doesn't exist. I believe Arenanet put in shadow creatures expecting us to make that connection. I just don't think the connection runs that deep. Menzies is probably involved in the Foundry in some ways, and maybe he helped with creating the Titans, but I don't think he told the White Mantle to open the Mist Gate. Do I think it was him that whispered to those guys? No. I think that's a really good point. I think I'm pretty much with you on this. So what we're saying is that there is a Menzies connection. Menzies is pulling the strings. I don't think it's a fucking accident they put Shadow Army in there, guys. Oh, I'll get to it in a minute. We got another comment I'll get to in a minute. There's a fucking Menzies thing going on. I 100% stand by that. There's a Menzies thing going on. But I think you're right. I don't think it's good to have Menzies play like this ultra-active role in this story where he was responsible for everything. The only issue with all of that, okay, is how did the White Mantle open the door? If it's just a Titan whispering to them, I mean, what are we saying? The Titans can open the door? Well, if it's just that obvious, why is this such a mysterious MacGuffin insane fucking thing? Where we're going on and on and on about how these doors are on a higher power level than anyone there, and it's, you know, Asgarin's alluding to shit like it's divine, right? If it's just Sviam, like, Menzies has to be at least fairly involved. So I don't know about the voice. The voice whispering to the White Mantle. You know, and those very clear descriptions about the voice being, you know, smooth and... I don't know, is that a Titan's voice? And then when we get to Svias, it really is doing nothing. So I don't know, maybe there's a bit of art in that, you know, the Sviam really doesn't do shit. But it does kind of go out on a bit of a whiff, doesn't it? This is where the story... I think it's a bit too convoluted. It's convoluted to even talk about. Sajid Kar says, I think there's way too many hoops to jump through to explain these things. Yeah, like... the story journal also mentions the mantle were fused with shadowy demons. So it is tied to the Titans and the issues they cause. Like, my thinking is... I don't know what my thinking is. This is just kind of the start, by the way. So let's keep going along here. So, if you watch my replay of all of this, just before Absolution here, you'll remember we discussed the idea that this story patch was only bad for people who rushed it. Remember that? And I said, well, I don't know. I haven't played it. So let me just ask you all now, in the live chat, in the comments as you're watching, just pause the video if you like, think to yourself, is this story bad just because people rushed it? Does taking your time with this story make it good automatically? Is that a fair thing to say? That it is good, all the haters just rushed it, right? Is that fair? All the haters just rushed it. I don't think it's fair at all. I don't think I rushed this. I think I've tried to think about it. And I think it's convoluted and it's not great. So here, let's see this comment. So hopefully now, WP understands why I compared part of this patch to the Traherne ritual at the end of Ore. In the first Heart Chamber instance, a solution to our problem was just thrown onto us without further explanation. This idea, oh, the Mist Gate is anchored to people, so we need touchstones to release their souls from the realm of torment to close the gate. That's at least 3 things to pick at in this single line. First, what does being anchored mean? Well, we don't know. Apparently being anchored is how the gate can remain open and closed. But then, since Mabon said Svias is anchored to the gate too, why would releasing of the 3 souls solve the problem? Don't we need to kill Svias as well? But then Svias is drawing magic from the gate to fortify itself. so we can't kill it until the gate is closed. So yeah, it's like it's a feedback loop, right? I was thinking the exact same thing. Also, if the gate can be anchored to people, you'd think the Massart researching it for hundreds of years would have already learned that. Shouldn't we at least learn that information back in the Mistburn Barrens? And we didn't. I think you're right. Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, there's nothing... You're totally right to compare it to the ritual at the end of War. There's nothing there, right? They just kind of throw this shit at us, but there's not previous world building or anything really setting it up. There's no examples of other rituals and spells that follow this kind of logic that can be named and, you know, like codified. It's just kind of a bunch of gobbledygook, right? Second, is releasing tormented souls from the realm of torment an established thing? Like when we defeated Shiro and Vizier Kilbron in Nightfall in the realm of torment, are we releasing their souls? I think that's a really good comparison, by the way. A great example. I mean, it definitely wasn't codified or explained or named back there. But so, to where, though? Certainly the story treated it like that's what we were doing. Were we releasing them to the normal part of the underworld? Well, we don't know. Maybe we just destroyed the souls? No, I don't think we destroyed the souls. If I remember rightly, there is a line somewhere that says they're not going to be a problem again. But I think they're still around. I might be... I don't think I'm imagining that. I just can't source it. I really feel that that was a line. I mean, I'd look at the Gate of Madness wiki page immediately just to check, personally. But, I mean, maybe put a pin in that observation of mine there, because I might be imagining it. But I feel like there was a line, something like that. That somewhere, it was something about how they've been chained up or subdued or something. I can't remember. Back in the Mistburn Barrens, we used the heart to destroy Yagon's soul. So it's possible to destroy a soul, but then where does the touchstones factor in? Also, yeah, that's amazing, by the way. We're destroying souls now. Oh, this really is like talking about the mechanics of the void. So a soul can be destroyed. We're talking about permadeath now. We're talking about spiritual death. We're talking about true obliteration. And maybe that's a really useful function of the world building in a franchise that has this weird interplay of, well, you're still kind of alive in a way. You're just in another realm after you die. But it's like Arenanet haven't really like laid things out, you know? Like the world building just feels wonky sometimes. Anyway, lastly, there's the touchstones. And aside from being a weird pace breaker in the middle of the action, it isn't even well explained. Okay, we're using the touchstones to unbind souls from the depths of the mists, but how? I vaguely remember some lore about how the realm of torment is where souls touched by Abaddon's power and where tormented demons go. So why don't we use the heart to dispel the demons merged with them? The story journal said they were merged with demonic entities. We've done so in the past with Eparch's demons, so why not? Instead, we invented the idea that the heart can somehow channel the essence of touchstones and release the souls. I really don't understand why they keep adding these new functions to the heart, as if it didn't already have enough for it to become a joke. And with this comment, I also want to address the idea that those who complain about the story are only those who rushed it. I hope I've demonstrated I'm complaining about the story, not because I rushed it, but the opposite. It's because he's looking closely at it. I'm very open to the idea that I'm overthinking it, but to me, the mainline story should be well explained, cleanly executed. If I'm doing a random event, I don't need them to tell me thoroughly about how the NPC invented this magical object or how they closed a rift, though I'd appreciate it. It's like how in the Desolation meta, you know, we've got the realm spikes and stuff. They didn't need to do a massive song and dance about them because it was just that meta event, right? But this is the main story, and they should handle information carefully in the main story. Anyway, that's one of my main complaints about the story here. I completely agree. Like, with every single word, I feel like you're speaking for me incredibly well here. Yeah. As a side note, I'm not trying to suggest there should be no mystery or cliffhanger, but there's a difference between mysteries and plot holes. Mysteries are usually about interesting subjects, and they're not usually clearly set up. For example, who is E? Is clearly a mystery, not a plot hole. What I mentioned in my comment are not mysteries because they're not set up to be. We won't call where did the ore cleansing ritual come from and who developed it a mystery, nor why are we able to enter Mordremoth's mine, and certainly not why can we lure Primordus and Jormag together and do Dragonstorm. They're tacked on solutions. And to be fair, some of these have slightly more detail than others, as much as I hate to admit it. There is a very loose attempt to explain why Jormag suddenly is such an idiot at the end of Icebrood Saga with the ley line thing. Anyway, they are tacked on solutions to major plot points. And my opinion, the end of this patch falls in the same category. By the way, that's not to say the patch itself is as bad as Champions. This patch, we get a new map to explore, good lore books, and a meta. Yeah, and we get a jumping puzzle and all that shit, right? Obviously, we're talking about gameplay review now, though. The story was generally okay before the first Heart Chamber instance. Yeah, and I don't want to forget that either. I think it was. I think whoever's been doing these books and shit around Secrets of the Obscure and Janthir Wilds is a fucking legend. It's done so well. Added so much to these for me. Shame all these post patches didn't have side stories in them. But yeah, so there you go. I think that is a very well articulated example of why the story just feels a bit... It's like there's a lot of MacGuffins being thrown around. They got to the point in this patch where they lampshaded the Heart of the Obscure being a MacGuffin, and then continued to use it as a MacGuffin. I mean, that feels pretty dire at that point. Alright, let's move over to this idea that Menzies isn't involved at all. So this guy here, Vidiri, says, why does WP keep talking about Menzies? I understand he's the leader of the Shadow Army, but the army still exists with or without his influence. Oh, fuck me. Oh, I guess the meta just failed. Did it fail or did it succeed? Even that thing, by the way, the Titan is flushing spectral agony. I assume I'm missing stuff about that because of the map, because of Anthos the Gardener or something. I'm hoping there's still a couple of lore books I haven't read, by the way. And certainly dialogue from the Gardener for us to find. Especially if he talks to us a lot in the jumping puzzle. That would be quite cool. Right, okay, so back to this thing. Why does WP keep talking about Menzies? I understand he's the leader of the Shadow Army, but the army still exists with or without his influence, all across the realm of Torment. 99.99% of the player base isn't going to make this connection. So in my opinion, the idea that the writers are intending this is a bit of an insult to them. They're not trying to hide it. The link just doesn't exist. I had a very different take from you, going purely off the lore that has been provided through Secrets of the Obscure and Janthir Wilds, with knowledge of the main Guild Wars 1 story prophecies. So here's my take on the Titans and the Mistgate. 1. The main Titan has been feasting on magic from the portal for centuries to grow, like how Decima and Greer had fed on Bloodstone magic. 2. The main Titan lured the White Mantle to the Mistgate to open it, and you'll notice he's glossing over how we open the gate, but I'll talk about that in a second. As Mabon's link to it had weakened in his death. Okay, first of all, that's not the story. Mabon never closed the gate. The gate was shut years ago, centuries ago. The original Missat that were living here in Barvanisos were desperately trying to open it because the Titans were going to come and kill them all. That has nothing to do with the recent event of Mabon casting that barrier around the island so that people can see them. Mabon just hid the Barvanisos from view. But Mabon was not the guy that had the door shut. The door being shut was like this 1,000-year-old mystery that, despite all the sacrifices and bringing the keystone here and all that shit, the Missat could never, ever, ever open. They couldn't do it. And so they died. So Mabon dying didn't weaken the gate. So there's this big question of how did the White Mantle open it? Which goes to Divinity, which goes to Menzies, which I think you've missed completely. Anyway, but perhaps Mabon was still more powerful than Savos, so he needed the 3 to tip the scales in favor to open it? I seriously doubt it was some they were humans thing. I mean, look, I don't think I don't think the human theory, the Reclaimer, fucking Forerunner, Halo story is 100%, but I don't think it's 0%. I don't have serious doubt it's that they were... Look, if it is... Look, the way that they were continually talking in that patch, like this gate, which it's very fitting that it's a godly thing, right? It was like on this whole other level, and it was very, very potent and very powerful. And if there is this human-gods connection, which again is tentative... I mean, look, I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just saying we have so little information, I'm not going to outright say no to the humans thing. Anyway, the main Titan convinced the three White Mantle to relight the Forge, which consequently twisted them into the 3 Titans. The 3 were starved and already going insane and failing to the voice's influence, so it's not a stretch that this could happen. I agree. The 4 of them used the Mist Gate to create rifts across Janthir Wilds, spreading the Titan spawn around in order to claim the lands for themselves and spread their influence over it. I think that's a fun idea. That's a good idea. We kill the 3 Titans, so their souls return to the afterlife. They're tethered to the gate, though, so like Mabon, they simply appear back there. So we go into the foundry and we disperse the 3 spirits before they are reforged into Titans. I agree with all of that. None of that precludes the involvement of Menzies, though. And then they say, and then my take on the creatures, the events with the shadow creatures. Legavo appears to test Livia whenever her conviction wavers. I agree. I think we did see that. This has been mentioned by her to be the case when we ask about it in Secrets of the Obscure. Although she wasn't specific regarding how it tests her, she did say she's confident in her unwavering conviction to the cause she's been using it for, and that this is the reason she hasn't met an ill fate like its previous users. I agree. I remember that line. I assume it's like the scepter that gets upset when it's not being used to dominate mist entities. So if the user hesitates or tries to use it for more than that, it rebels. I guess, but also I just sort of felt like that line was very vague. I almost felt like it was just like, whatever your agenda, as long as you don't waver, it sort of fit the bill. Anyway, when Livia gives pause about opening the barrier to Barbanissos, since she's instead trying to convince her allies, the scepter summons local Titan spawn to test her conviction. Isgarin says they're attracted to the scepter. When Livia goes through the barrier and waits for her allies before proceeding, the scepter summons local Titan spawn to test her conviction. When Livia at the Mistgate shows weakness regarding the toll of the scepter summons local shadow spawn from the gate. Once again, while not explicitly mentioned, it's implied by the previous pattern. So hold on, your second paragraph. You're saying the only reason shadow creatures are here is because the scepter made them be there. That's it. You're saying, oh, all the enemies are it's just the scepter. I mean, again, I can't disprove the flying spaghetti monster, right? So there's not, I can't say this is definitely wrong. It feels a bit empty to me, though. I think you're right about everything you say about the scepter is testing her, and this idea. Look, what I think's happening with the scepter is its mysticism. You know, like a lot of fantasy settings, right? The way they handle their magic is they don't put a science to it. You know, like a lot of animes especially, they put like really careful, like fucking, you know, they kind of create a magical science out of the thing. But it's a lot better to do it Tolkien style, really, especially for long-running franchises, where you keep things very vague and very ambiguous, and you kind of just treat magic mystically, much like superstitious medieval people did in the real world, right? There's no real logic to it, and don't look too deeply. And it's just kind of a vibe with the scepter, and that vibe means we have a lot of conflict and struggle in this patch, and the Titans are there, and oh my god, is this just bad luck, or is it the scepter manipulating things? You know, like we're just supposed to be playing in a grey space, right? And so I agree with all of that. I think what you're trying to argue is the scepter specifically causes enemies to be around, and it can create shadow spawn. I don't know, man. Look, I'm going to say to you all, look, the number one reason I think that there is a real Menzies connection here, I'll show you in-game right now. The number one reason I think they are genuinely doing Menzies more than anything else. You could say, oh, they saw on Wiki that there were shadow creatures and they had the models, right? You can say stuff like that, and I'll maybe believe it. Wait, how do I replay? Where are my purple starbursts? Oh, is that one? No, that's a mirror. What's going on? So because I didn't play the base game, I can't replay... Oh, shit. That's Desperate Measures. Right. Hold on. Okay, Salvation's Cost. There's my purple starburst. Here it is. Ready?
What is this nightmare?
Right. This is your first time here. We're in the realm of torment, deep in the mists. It's sort of an afterlife.
The foundry of failed creations, to be precise. The abyss from which titans are born.
So we move forwards. Ready?
Ren, you were here before? Do these demons look different than you remember them?
They do appear to have changed. It's been quite some time since my last visit.
There. That's it.
You've been here.
Centuries ago. And I had to clean up after some heroes.
And then obviously we get the nice line about... Oh, I had a comment where someone was like, that's an awkward line because Livia's here. She was one of the heroes. I just want to say she wasn't. She wasn't a part of the Nightfall story. She was a part of the Eye of the North story. That's why. Because Arenanet went to the effort of having voiced dialogue remarking on the fact that these are not standard Realm of Torment demons, right? Which they shouldn't be. And when I played last time, I remarked on that fact that, you know, Graven Monoliths would have been interesting because they sort of felt like helpers of Abaddon that could have easily just been helpers of Cormyr later. Anyway, Arenanet knows that they're very specifically doing shadow creatures here. Arenanet, now you open your thing saying 99.9% of the player base doesn't know about Menzies. Sorry, I don't believe in that. First of all, I disagree with the idea that even if it is 99%, that means it's an inaccessible storytelling beat. You don't need everyone to know. As long as it makes sense as we go forwards, that happens all the time. Huge amounts of Janthir Wilds are based on what was previously fairly subtle lore. I mean, Christ, this thing about the 3 White Mantle at the end here is based on doing side story that, again, I would argue 70% at least of people didn't do these side story Cordicus, White Mantle collection pickups. But they make it make sense when it needs to, as a part of the main story. They can write a story about Menzies, even if it was 99.9%. But it's not 99%. A lot of... Look, I know, again, I do have biases. I've spent 10 years talking about Guild Wars 2 story, or just Guild Wars story. And, you know, the number of Guild Wars 1 players that we have out there now is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Like, I understand all of that. But I don't think it's 99.9%. I think a lot of people know about Menzies. A lot of people played the Fissure of Woe in the original game and stuff. And you're living in the age of the internet, man. I mean, you yourself are on a YouTube video learning more about the game and, like, information travels. People talk to their friends about it in Discord. You know, they speculate. They go to Reddit. They go to the official forums. They watch streamers. That information will leak out even if you didn't actually play the Fissure of Woe in the first game. I think it's a completely valid idea for a story. And Arenanet themselves here said, hey, you know, like this theory that they just, oh, we have the assets for the Shadow Army, so we'll do that. Like, I don't think it's that. I think it's that, okay, it shouldn't be Realm of Torment demons here anyway. Abaddon is gone. He's gone. This was the redeemed realm. It's only recently fallen into a little bit of disrepair again because Cormyr left after the library scene in POF, right? And when you do Talcora's thing, I think they have just generic ghosts, not shadow creatures in there, right? It should not be Realm of Torment creatures. So in a way, this doesn't deserve any dialogue from these guys. Again, I ended up talking about, well, maybe Waiting Sore missed that whole arc, so you can kind of get weasel into it, right? But the point is, Arenanet voice acted, hey, look, this is weird. It's a different faction here. It's the Shadow faction. And it's not just models, right? It's not, they didn't just call these Relentless Spirits or something, or Lost Spirits, or Tortured Souls or something. They fucking named them all after the Shadow Army. They all specifically have Shadow shit in them. Not to mention the fact that Shadow Army lore is in Guild Wars 2 in Dragonfall at the end of Season 4. Sorry, I mean, this is very, very blatantly, to me, Menzies. Like, it's indisputably Arenanet are angling for Menzies here. Now, to what extent Menzies actually is affected the Janthir Wild stuff, I don't know. And I don't like the idea that this is one big shaggy dog story and it all meant fucking nothing because Sveum actually sat there doing nothing. So I think Arenanet have to be careful about that. I think those are very honest, very good criticisms. But I think this is... Like, there was a response to that guy who just waffled that pure nonsense about Guild Wars 2 throwing bones, Guild Wars 1 throwing bones earlier. He has a response there saying, yeah, it's just because WP does a 6-hour video on every little bit of the game and the whole community laughs at him. I was like, no, man, like, people were talking about Menzies on here. It's not just me, all right? It's not me looking too deeply at it. And to me, like, the example number one is that dialogue. Maybe I haven't convinced people. And I guess we'll see, right? We'll see. I'll tell you what, if it isn't Menzies on any level, come and laugh at me in 4 months or whatever. You know, the next mini X pack. I mean, the beauty is it will come quick. Come and laugh at me when I'm wrong. Tell me to eat my hat. Do it. I invite you to. But I'm pretty confident Menzies has an involvement here. Like, this isn't a complete fucking blasé accident. They know the optics of this. And this comment's bizarre to me. At the start, you say it insults them for it to be Menzies. Really? I think it insults them to suggest they just fucking threw shadow shit in. Your theory is it's just shadow stuff because the Scepter of Ore summoned shadow stuff, even though there's no line about it or anything? Like, what? We've never seen the Scepter of Ore summon shadow stuff. Maybe it's been able to manipulate things that are in the area to attack and come at you, right? Like those Titans. Through this mystical, her spirit is wavering. Maybe we say that. But maybe that happened here. Maybe she's somehow luring shadow creatures to us. But that doesn't mean it made the shadow creatures. The shadow creatures are here, whether you believe in that theory or not. Why are they here? And it isn't actually that complicated to have Menzies involved in this story. Balthazar's gone. The Six are gone. It's just the Hall of Chains story. It's like Desmina looking at the fact, and Doom looking at the fact there's no Grenth in the underworld anymore. So there's a power vacuum, right? Menzies is the last of those like kind of big characters, Doom-style characters, divine characters, right? And they've written no story about him. All the others have been addressed, and he's just wandering around in the mist. He's the last man standing. It's very, very easy to say, well, yeah, he came and he's the one that relit the forge. Like, it's that simple. It's not that complicated. That's it. And it works. And it especially is fun to combine that with the idea that maybe he had donated the foundry in the initial place back in Guild Wars 1, which would be a very nice retroactive thing to tie together. So I do believe Menzies is a part of this. There you go. You know, whether that's his voice whispering to the White Mantle and why the White Mantle could open the door, I don't have those answers. Maybe it's all Menzies. And speaking about it all being Menzies, by the way, I've got a really crazy good comment for you all on that in a minute. All right, so next. Okay, we got Zhuzhang again here. I think this is their last message. They were all brilliant, so I'm platforming them and all. In Secrets of the Obscure, the Eye of the Janthir was a purposeful hint at Janthir Wilds, and the Shadow Army, the only major hint. Yeah, the Shadow Army, like Lear's asking, what the fuck are the Shadow Army doing here in one of the meta events in the last expansion? Like, that seems like a pretty blatant hint to me. Werbear says, I don't want Menzies only having a mini X-Pack to him, just like I didn't want Doom to only be a raid thing. Well, look, Werbear, okay. What? Mini X-Packs are what you're getting. There's no such... They don't even really call them mini X-Packs, right? This is it, man. It's main story, told over a year. This is as good and as big as they'll ever get. I don't think it's fair to compare Janthir Wild's scope to one raid wing. I agree with you. It might have been nice to see even more with Doom in Guild Wars 2. Might have been. I don't know. It was kind of a retread of the Guild Wars 1 Underworld anyway, so... You know, like, one raid... This is not the same as... As bad as Janthir Wilds and Secrets of the Obscure might be in your mind, it's not as bad as a raid wing. And at the end of the day, this is as big as they can go. So if your motivation there is saying, look, WP, I just want them to do justice to these stories in a big way, this is as most justice as you will get in Guild Wars 2. This is as big as they can go, as hard as they can work. This is it, man. And you should really ask yourself a question at that point. And that question is, will this game ever satisfy me again? Right, because there is... any lore idea you might like. So, like, I've always wanted to see what happens with the Wizard's Tower. Have you guys seen that crazy Wizard's Tower in Kessex Hills? Like, you go to this town and there's all these elementals around. There's a fucking floating wizard's tower. I'm thinking of doing a video about it. And it might be like the start of a series called, I don't know, Guild Wars 2 Mysteries or something. It's really interesting. Super captivating. I'd love an expansion on that one day. And hey, look. Fast forwards. We did. We got an expansion. Now it's a mini X-Pack, right? But overall, I'm satisfied that it got that. If the Wizard's Tower only had a raid wing, I think that's setting up for some potential disappointment. I actually advocated for that for a while. And I think in one of the... you remember the Season 4 Reddit threads with the devs? They actually said a bunch of teams were arguing over who could get the Wizard's Tower for years. Was it going to be a raid? Was it going to be a fractal? Whatever. It ended up being a mini X-Pack. And in retrospect, I'm quite happy with what they did with the Wizard's Tower in a mini X-Pack. So a mini X-Pack around Menzies is fine. The only issue I have with all of this is I don't like being in the mists much. So a Menzies thing that is grounded on Tyria, thumbs up. I'm happy with that. The thing is as well, we want to map Menzies onto the other stuff. Does Menzies map onto the troubles with the Pale Tree? And if so, how? Is he a part of the nightmare somehow? You know, there was more to it than we realised with the Morgemoth connection. Does Menzies map onto the issues the Largos are struggling with? You know, how do they tie it to some locale on Tyria? And these are questions I have no idea. All right, so anyway, back here to Zhuang. The lack of important discussions in-game is also what annoys me in this patch. For example, Livia and the Scepter of All thing. In Season 3, Livia literally told us about it. To quote her dialogue, I've extended my life using an artifact known as the Scepter of All. So everyone in the Heart Chamber instance, save for Poised Arrow, everyone should know that she was giving up her immortality by giving up the Scepter. But there was barely any conversation about it, and I don't understand why. Well, look, we can rationalize it. I don't want to have to... I agree with you. I don't want to rationalize, but we can rationalize that, you know, she used the Scepter to proc Eternal Life, and now she doesn't need it anymore. But again, that should be explained in-game then, right? That's why we're not having the conversation, because it's no biggie. But we didn't even get that conversation, and that's the point, isn't it? We need the conversations. We need this stuff to be rounded out. I really would understand if Livia retaliates a bit more. She's being asked to give up her immortality. And if Arenanet want drama and conflict between the characters, wouldn't this be better than what we get with Livia and Anise? Dude, he's so right. Look at these amazing comments, guys. He is so right. Look, you want to get a bit of melodrama going. You want a bit of fighting. You want to have your cat fight with Livia and Anise. There it is. It's fucking teed up for you. It is teed up, and they didn't do it. Instead, it was, like, more waffly than that, and I didn't buy into it at all. But I would have bought into that. I would have bought into someone being asked to give up their immortality. There could have been a lot of nice, cool, nasty arguments in there, you know. Anise quipping that she's had her time, shit like that. It was... I didn't spot that, but you're right. I think that's a real shame they missed that. I would add the fact that Mabon locked inside... I would add the fact that Mabon locked himself inside the Realm of Torment into this list too, because I was so confused when I saw him closing the gate from within, but no character remarked on it. Perhaps this was setting up for Menzies to eventually take the Scepter, but shouldn't this still be commented on after the fact? It's funny, again, you know what, you make me realise with these how much of a boiled frog I am. All of these conversations should be happening. I'm so used to getting just like nothing. Yeah, we get the exterior lore books, but we need this. We need the meat. We need the extra dialogue. We need the story. Ever since Heart of Thorns, man, I'm telling you, ever since Heart of Thorns, it's just like this blockbuster, really short storytelling. And that's the difference between this and 14. You know, a lot of people don't like the tedium and all the little details in 14, but, you know, the storytelling allows you to click and skip when it's a bit slow for you. And for the people who do want it to be rounded out, it's there. In Guild Wars, there's so much, like, presumption and guessing. So that little thing there, right? Mabon locked himself in the Realm of Torment. No one commented on it. Do you know why I didn't comment on it? I thought it was a bit weird, right? But the reason I didn't comment on it was because it's moments after his line where he said, I have my ways. And it's weird enough that he's there already. So I kind of just assumed that his ghost could hop realities. My assumption is he's not stuck here. My assumption was, oh, he can move around, because, like, how did he get here in the first place? It's really fucking weird he was here. But, okay, and he has his ways. I didn't realise that I Have My Ways was about him having the scrying eye and the cliffhanger in the last one. So I just sort of thought, oh, well, maybe he can move around, because that's something he can do, because he's a badass ghost, or because of his experience in life. Like, again, it's me rationalising. And the thing is, you basically just have to turn your brain off to this stuff as you're playing in the moment, because it's too much to question and ask and think about as it's going. So yeah, I don't know. There's also dropped side stories, like the Keystone, which was said to be in Barvanisos. So I didn't know this, because I haven't done the jumping puzzle, I haven't seen it all yet. So there's no Keystone in this patch at all? I was looking forward to seeing it as a landmark at least. Or at least the pieces of the Keystone. Remember, they got pieces of it. There's a drop side stories like the Keystone, which was said to be in Barvanisos. Since the lore books that revealed it weren't mainline story, I was expecting the meta of Barvanisos to talk about it, but we all know how the meta goes. The other thing, by the way, who was whispering to the White Mantle? Was it Menzies or the Titan? Another thing I think that's pro-Menzies column is the Titan doesn't say shit in the actual patch. Like, they're quite clear about having it be a mute. They didn't have to do that. Ura has a very particular voice. Decima has a very particular... You know, they have characters, and yet this guy doesn't. So that kind of runs contrary to this quite eloquent thing that was whispering to the White Mantle. But maybe that's because it only does it in their minds and it didn't want to communicate. But, oh, look, I'm rationalizing again. Okay, since the lore books revealed it wasn't mainline story, I was expecting the meta of Barvanisos to talk about it. But we all know how the meta goes. We saw Lex Talon the Merciless, whose big attack is called Keystone Vengeance. That's the Gorseval thing. I didn't know that, by the way. There's a combat log thing. So presumably the Gorseval thing is connected to the Keystone, but there's no hint as to where it goes. I'm not saying they should do a Keystone story in the middle of this complex arc. What do you mean, where it goes? But shouldn't there be a book or some dialogue about it? Something concrete that tells us, hey, we know this story's here, we'll deal with it later. Like maybe a surviving Massart took it away, or a Titan consumed it. Maybe the information is on the map and I missed it, but I really don't see anything about it. And there's more details. Like, why does Decima call Greer her brother, and Ura the leader? Why is Ura more powerful than the other two? I wouldn't go so far as to say the Titan White Mantle reveal wasn't planned. But I feel like they didn't plan this part that well. Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it? None of it was discussed. And they're not the right genders either. Either Ulrich or Judge became a woman in the forge. You know, we're just glossing over that. So, yeah, I look, this, I gotta say, guys, this shit here is why, emphatically, my opinion is the writing isn't very good. And it is a direct consequence of there not being enough in-game. There's not enough. And it's not because of voice acting, and it's not because of instances, and it's not because of assets for new locales. It's because they're not writing enough. I mean, who's... So I want to ask you guys now, in the next round of comments, or in the live chat right now, do we have any, like, major lorehounds who are ultra satisfied by this? All these holes, all these missing pieces that make the story just a bit... Ugh. Like, are you liking that? Is this Dark Souls storytelling? Because I don't think it is. I think this is just bad. I think this is badly written. When it doesn't hold up to any level of scrutiny, really. It's too much Swiss cheese. Too many holes. And so what is this? Is it because they were asked to write it in a single year? It's too difficult? I don't know. And again, I don't want to get too personal about the writers. I do have a comment where someone is going to get personal about the writers in a minute, which I'm a bit iffy about, but yeah, we'll do that in a second. Okay, can I just say we're now halfway? It's funny, when I read these messages, I'm like, oh, I've got something to say about... By the way, I didn't get every comment. This isn't every comment. This is just the ones I like, and I thought I had something to reflect on. And it's funny, I can read it and know I have something to reflect on, but to actually say it out loud in the process of a stream takes so fucking long, doesn't it? Look at that. We've nearly been talking 2 hours. I'm sure we'll go through some of these other ones a bit quicker. All right, Ink Spores. In fact, probably much, much, much quicker. Sorry to the people in the back half. Ink Spores says, I really hope they follow through with the commander's penalty. I'd love it if next expansion we get a letter that's different if you sided with Livia, or a news article about the controversy. Just something that makes the decision feel tangible would be awesome. No, I agree. I think getting a different mail is a pretty low bar, and they'll probably do that at least. I doubt it'll go any further than that. And, you know, I don't know whether I would argue they go for that. Then we move into personal story level stuff, right, where it's your adventure, your story. Which, by the way, if you guys remember, in the last video, or the video before, I talked about how I was reading some early articles about Guild Wars 2. And you know what, guys? They're all about how it's your story, you influencing the world, your campaign, you know, branching shit. It's all personal story stuff, and it's amazing to look at it 10 years later and how just they abandoned all of that. That's going to be a fun video when we do that, seriously. Sorry, looking at chat here. Dark Souls doesn't need a super coherent story, so when you translate that style into a game that does need it, it don't work. Yeah, I mean, I haven't played it, so I don't know. My feeling with that, isn't it just very, like, vibes, atmospheric exploration, and then big bosses, right? And then you can puzzle things together later. But I also get the impression with Dark Souls, when you do puzzle things together later, it's extremely tightly made. No? Maybe I'm wrong. It's on the list, guys. One day, who would watch me play Dark Souls? Is it too late? It's just, what was I playing recently? And I threw up a tweet of all the people that... Oh, Undertale. I played Undertale like 2 months ago. And I ran a search on my YouTube comments. And there are like hundreds of people begging me for a Let's Play. WP, play Undertale. You'll like it. Play Undertale. You'll like it. Please, I'd love to watch Undertale. And, you know, I was focused on Heart of Thorns or whatever, right? And I threw up a tweet. I said, I'm so sorry to all these people because it is a really good game. And Dark Souls is the same. I'm sure if I run a search... Anyway, sorry. Well, this is going to take forever. It would have been better if they'd been building these 3 White Mantle up since Janthir Sentry in the main story more, not side story. If they got rid of the Mistburns Barons instead of Barvanisos, if the final map was Torment, the map could be putting out the Forge, and then we would have known the White Mantle Zealots had more intrigue to what happened, more stakes and tension when we finally find them, had more time in the Realm of Torment to wrap it all up. But alas, the story is what it is. Janthir Wilds was all and pretty good, just the ending was one hell of a stumble. Do you know what? I'm so happy I replayed it all to remind myself of how strong some of the earlier areas were, because holy fuck, if I just played this... If I waited 3 months and did Repentance, and waited 3 months at Mount Barrier or whatever, and then waited 3 months and just did this, I really would have been... I have all the motivation in the world to be invested in this story, and I would have dropped off it really hard. I'm very glad I did the replay, I'll tell you that. But alas, the story is what it is. 2 things. The scepter is somewhat sentient, yes. So why did it willingly let itself get sacrificed? Again, I think of the scepter in, like, mystical terms. The foundry was still lit when we left. Maybe that has something to do with Lear. All right, look, I don't think it's to do with Lear that it's lit when we left. I think it's lit when they left because they had no time for this instance, and so half the shit that we should have probably seen in cutscenes and scripted moments didn't happen. That's why it's still lit. I mean, that's a crime as well, isn't it? That we don't actually go up to the foundry, that we don't actually like visually resolve some of these plot aspects. Turning the foundry off is a big deal, right? We should have seen that depower. Also, by the way, the thing about it being the 3 White Mantle... Earlier there was that comment. Did they really plan all of this the whole way? Do you know what, guys? I think they planned it to be the 3 Titans at the end. And when they triple-dipped with the meta, the story, and the strikes... When they triple-dipped with the Titans... And the Convergence, sorry. There was a lot of critique over that. You know, if you're a very casual player and you just kill the Titan once in the Convergence, it's not that bad. But when you do it in the main story at launch, and then in the main story at Mount Barrier, and you do it 100 times in the Convergence, and you do it 100 times in the raids, okay, that's a lot of that's a lot of the reusing the same boss. I think that they saw that criticism, and they said, okay, for the very end, let's not do the Titans. Let's have the White Mantle themselves. And I think they U-turned there, and I don't know whether that was the right decision. It's easy to say it's the wrong one because this wasn't too satisfying, but would doing the Titans again have been that satisfying? I don't know. They needed animations. They needed new combat stuff. They needed like different forms and phases, you know. They needed to it needed to be like Decima, but like supersonic mode Decima, where she's all golden and glowing like the macrophages were or something, you know. And then maybe it would have worked. I don't know. It might have just been a very cut down instance, and one of you guys has a theory about that I'll get to in a second. Hardy says, I want to remind people that most of the lore placed in SOTO paid off for the most part. It was all set up for a reason, mainly surrounding Waiting Sorrow and Janthir, execution aside. So I find it hard to believe that anything in this isn't breadcrumbs for future content, assuming they make it. That's a little double negative there. Mainly Dizlana, the Pale Tree, the Shadow Army, more Shiver Peaks. For those that feel let down, Menzies didn't suddenly show up, twirl his mustache, and yell, "Aha! Now I've got you meddling Tyrians! I choose you, General! Destroy them!" We'll see more. And I mainly want to applaud Arenanet, execution aside, for delivering what I really believe to be the most world building of any expansion in Guild Wars 2. Not saying others were bad per se, but those Tyrian Alliance instances did far more updates on inter-nation relations, region updates, and the future content hints than any other X-Pack. The Lion's Arch instances were very good. I want to say, though, Secrets of the Obscure was very good, too, about, like, when you actually read all the lore at Amnitas and all the documents and all the connections they made, and they platformed a lot of stuff there, too. Both expansions have been good for that, and they had to be, because, you know, so much of this franchise had been around the EDs. They really needed to transition out of that as smoothly as possible. Anyway, it covered basically the entire known planet, save for the Far West, but even that was hinted at for two Massar, who possibly survived and fled. That's true. So I'd give this X-Pack a solid 7.5 to 8 out of 10. I really dislike Secrets of the Obscure's final updates, because while the meta was neat, I felt the map and the story fell pretty flat, and it should have been its own expansion. Though not Champions flat, I can't believe people compare Absolution update to that mess. I think this did far better job with the self-contained story, even if its execution wasn't perfect as always. As an aside, when talking to Dagda in the last instance, who knows if that really was Mabon, I thought it'd be a hilarious twist if it was Menzies disguised as a Massar and have our hero yet again fooled into helping a god hiding behind a dead Massar. Probably not the case, but just a funny what if. You're not actually the only person with that what if, a lot of people have. So yeah, comparing Secrets of the Obscure to Janthir Wilds, Secrets of the Obscure story disappointed me thoroughly because the core idea of the story was so fucking tedious and boring. Making the demons another oppressed faction for us to save in a rebellion, and characterizing them as sad, misunderstood people who just needed to eat was lame as fuck. The fact that they did a will they, won't they betrayal story for an entire year with Paitha, only to reveal, yeah, she's decent, was lame as fuck. To me, I hated the direction of the Secrets of the Obscure story. And you are right, that last patch was pretty thin. It was do an adventure, little thing, do an adventure, and then boom, you're in. But, you know, the side lore there with Epark I liked in the Maguma jungle and stuff. So I think for me, the failings of last year was just their overall idea. This year, I think their overall idea has been brilliant. Has been a huge step up. Has been really, really... It ticked a lot of my boxes. I really had a lot of fun with it. The problem is they once again overscoped. This was too big. This ending was too big for this. This should have been the opening act of the next mini X-Pack or something. Found another way to conclude it. I don't know. And a lot of this is bumpiness that maybe they'll find expertise for 4, 5, 6 mini X-Packs down the line, maybe. Assuming there's not like a revolving door of talent and all that. So I don't know. I think they both had their different issues. Overall, yeah, I think Janthir Wilds was much better for the story for me. Much better. Nios was not great. And yeah, it's not like Champions. Anyone comparing this to Champions, I think, is being a fool. I haven't seen anyone in my comments do it. And I haven't done it. I wouldn't guys, come on. Champions, the issue with Champions is more the overall decision to just say, okay, the Ice Brood saga has to end at this point, even though it's completely unearned, you know. And it's not just the final bit of Champions and how they fucked with Jormag's character and all of that. It's like slinging the dwarves in there and all that stuff. Anyway, let's not get into a big Champions thing. We know how we feel. And I don't think this is even remotely on par with that. So Sammy says, totally agree about the Waiting Sorrow stuff you said at the end. So this is in reference to me saying, you know, I really liked her last year when she was very mysterious and all that. I was much more... when she was... not mysterious, sorry. But when she was sad and she was more cosmos-oriented. And having a mystical character like that on screen when we had the Scepter of Awe as a mystical device also, I think, would have been a good pairing. And it would have felt a bit less MacGuffin-y. And even the Heart of the Obscure would have felt less MacGuffin-y if she herself was inscrutable. But she was very scrutable, wasn't she? They went with, like, Happy Grandma character, which, again, is like... I'm not into the archetypes of characters that I think they are. I don't know where a lot of their impulse comes from with some of this stuff. Anyway, totally agree about the Waiting Sorry stuff you said at the end. I was much more interested in her via books and conversations and Secrets of the Obscure. They just wrote her like a scrambled mess, ... Yeah, and it is a bit incoherent. The Waiting Sorrow we meet at the end doesn't really line up. The fact that hundreds of her years of absence from the court... Like, you can say, like this previous person... Hardy says, oh, look, they paid off a lot of Secrets of the Obscure stuff, like Waiting Sorrow. But again, where's the detail work? They didn't really. There's huge chunks of Waiting Sorrow's time away from the court that the game doesn't even allude to. You know, and it's like, it's difficult to even figure her timeline out. And when you do figure her timeline out, and you realise just how crazy it is she didn't come back to help last year, you don't get to indulge in any argument or debate about that. There's just nothing in game. So, did they pay it off, or did they just kind of, like... I don't know. Next. So, this is from Kobizig. My throat is going to go by the end of this. I've watched a lot of your videos, and I've heard you time over time discuss successes and failures, and your critique and passion on the game. It is appreciated. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. I was getting a bit worried that it's just so fucking... teeth-pulling and negative wanky that people are like, you know what, I'm just not having fun watching this anymore. And they hit the unsub and they're out. That's why you want to watch me in Oblivion, guys, alright? Watch me play something I know a bit less about. I'm more of a wide-eyed, you know, enthusiastic geek, which is what I think some of you came to the channel for. Yes, that's a self-promotion. It's not shameless. Okay, it's a great game, but it's got its limits. I think the heartbeat of Guild Wars as a whole is slowing down, not revving up. Well, see... I would say that we've slowed down in the mini-X packs compared to before, but I would hope we're consistent. I don't think we're slowing down. Did Janthir Wilds slow down from Secrets of the Obscure? No, it didn't, right? In some ways, I think it was a little bit bigger and a little bit better. It has its issues, but it was a little bit bigger and a little bit better. I do think that. So I don't agree with slowing down day to day. Maybe if we compare it to fucking Heart of Thorn's launch or whatever, yeah. Or certainly just the game's launch. Anyway, each expansion appears to be an emergency defibrillator to keep fans connected, and it is working. But throwing a paint at a canvas doesn't make it better. Arenanet might be too nearsighted, but they can't be Monet. Lovely, look at that. Who doesn't like a metaphor that goes all the way? In my opinion, Arenanet is putting out what feels like one part of a larger chapter, and they're pretending it reads like a whole book, even when the pacing, the depth, and the payoff aren't there. They're not trying to fool us maliciously. It's just the reality of a live game, trying to keep the lights on, and the fans somewhat satisfied. Dude, absolutely. I'm going to say that again, because that's how I feel. They're not trying to fool us maliciously. It's the reality of a live game, you know, and the fact teams are making it and all that. I always feel that. Some people attribute malice and deliberate deceit and all that shit. I don't think so. I think they're geeks too. I think they're excited about what they're trying to do. I think you get into game dev because you love making games and you want to entertain people. And I don't think they're cynically sitting there lying to you. If an expansion doesn't hit a bar, I don't think it's because they're, you know, they're mentally checked out or whatever. I really don't think that. Who am I to say, I guess? But yeah. If they embrace the episodic model honestly and transparently, like a serial story that builds over time with smaller stakes per beat, it could work. But right now they're selling fragments as wholes, and it's starting to show. Yeah, you know, there were conversations like this during Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. And they never quite nailed it. They were trying to do that with Season 3, and I think Season 3 is an overly complicated mess. Season 3 is way too jam-packed. It's filled with loads of shit. So I don't know. I don't know whether they need more practice at it or whatever. But I do think it's quite telling. You remember last year when Secrets of the Obscure came out? There was a lot of conversation about, like, okay, is this another arc like the Elder Dragon arc? It's going to go on for years. Is Janthir Wilds a direct sequel or not? You know, you kind of have to look for quite precise quotes from quite precise interviews. You know, Arenanet haven't come out and said, no, this is what we're doing. They haven't laid out a foundation in terms of what style of storytelling it is, how self-contained each chapter should be. And I think that that would be very useful for them to do and to communicate in a big, clear way to the community. Because, yeah, that might fix our expectations of this. And it might help them figure out what they're doing each patch as well a bit. So, yeah, to stop interrupting you, if they embrace the episodic model honestly and transparently, like a serial story that builds over time with smaller stakes per beat, it could work. But right now, they're selling fragments as wholes, and it's starting to show. Emotional arcs don't get time to land, because we're forced to jump from conflict to climax too quickly. A chapter of a book without enough pages to read. It feels like you're playing a demo for a deeper story that never fully lands. They tried to please story fans, meta-event fans, PvE grinders, and roleplayers all at once in one compressed package. Exhausting. They overpack the story and under-deliver the time to experience. It's like trying to cram a whole season of TV into a short film. It can look good, sound epic, and have a great idea, but if it doesn't stick because the pacing is too rushed and the gameplay loop isn't meaty enough to compensate. Arenanet can still make this work with the small model expansion. They just need to stop pretending all these are full expansions and instead lean into what they're actually doing, episodic storytelling. Here's what I think happened. Last year, the audience feedback was the same. You've overreached, right? You're trying to tell too big of a story in a mini X-Pack. That was the same conversation last year, right? We were all in the same place. Arenanet's response, they did that retrospective blog post, right? And they were emphatic in that blog post, we're going to resolve that. They were very clear, we understand what you're talking about, we're going to scale down next time, right? And they really tried to address it. But here's what I think I can observe in retrospect. The way they scaled down was to say, okay, it's not a world-ending threat now. Like, we said to them, okay, look, Nyos was too big. It's the fate of the entire realm. It's the fate of Tyria with all the... It's too big. That's what we said to them. It's too big. So this year, they said, okay, we won't go so big. And their interpretation of not going too big was to lower the stakes. This is much more appropriate. It's about 3 titans in a distant area of the world. And they don't go too much about how it's the end over and over and over again. I mean, they do a bit. There was that cringy line in the final instance I looked at yesterday. But still, that was their way of scaling down. And they did scale down. And they tried to respond to that criticism. I think, though, what I can see is that it's not actually about the fate of the free world. It's about having too much story, too many topics, too many locales, right? Nyos didn't feel good because it was a locale flung in there, just as the Foundry is a locale that's kind of been flung in there, you know? Too many characters on screen, characters that don't even really by any right need to be there, like Anise or Malice, right? Put in the Menzies, not that they've done much with Menzies hints, fair enough, but you know, like when they're trying to tie things together, there's not enough writing. So when we talk about scaling down, Arenanet's response was to talk about the scale of the conflict, but I think they need to scale down in a different way. Not do too many story beats. That's the scaling down that they need to look at. That's what I would hope they look at for the next mini X-Pack. But again, presumably a lot of that's plotted out already, and, you know, so who knows. So yeah, maybe that's what's going on. They tried to solve this issue, but they did it in a way that was not the complete picture, perhaps. So anyway, back to Copperzig. Says, stop marketing these like traditional expansions. Instead, call them what they are, chapters or acts in a longer saga. Look, I don't agree with them rebranding to another thing. Oh, it's expansions. No, it's Living World. No, it is expansions. Living World. It's the Icebrood Saga. It's a saga. It's not an expansion, but it's as good as one. Oh, wait, no, never mind. It is expansions. And now they're just patches. And now they're mini X-Pack. You know, they get a lot of critique for rebranding and repackaging this shit over and over. I don't think they're going to fuck with that anymore. At the end of the day, it is what it is now, I think. Long story short, how could they fix it? Structure and label content like an episodic series. Embed story and growth into an open world and side content. Focus on fewer characters more deeply. Make masteries meaningful, not just mechanical. Well, see, I think a lot of people do this when they're given feedback, by the way. We're talking about one thing, and then suddenly people are talking about something completely different. Like, yeah, I'd like to see masteries be made meaningful. It's not really about the story, is it, though? Be transparent and stop pretending each expansion is a full epic. I mean, did they? Did they pretend Janthir Wilds was a full epic? I don't think they did. I think they overreached. And they didn't plot it well. As in, like, Mistburn Barrens, very little happened, and then in this patch, too much happened. If I played so he rounds out by saying this. I've played Guild Wars 1 since launch, Guild Wars 2 beta, and continue to play with this with my wife and my kids. We enjoy it, but we can't keep the pace, and it loses interest over time. Pacing is key with this game, and it can always be enjoyed. I don't think it's a horrible game. It's just trying too hard to be something it's not. Keeping up with the Joneses. Well, there you go. By the way, I had a comment. I didn't take a screenshot of it, but I had a comment from someone saying, "Hey WP, it's been real, but I'm leaving. I'm off to the real world. Thanks for the videos. I'm gonna go have a real life." And he like quit, and I thought, you know what? Good on you, man. I should have screenshotted it. I guess it wasn't a different video, so it didn't show up. You can hear my voice dying. It doesn't hurt or anything. It's just, you know, it just gets weak. As long as it's not actually sore, I'm fine with it. I should probably drink a bit more coffee. Alright, so Cott says, I don't understand how Tatiana, Judge, and Ulrich got forged into Titans. Did they forge themselves? Who did the actual forging here? And Emily says, if they were forged into Titans, why are their souls still here? Okay, let me just say, even as far as Guild Wars 1's concerned, there's like no information about how the forge actually works. Alright? I mean, really, it would probably shock some of you Guild Wars 2 players to realise just how thin the Guild Wars 1 shit is. The grass ain't necessarily greener. It's not like when we went there in Guild Wars 1, they had some long fucking story about it. No, we had a random boss in the area, the Guardians of Kamali, and then when they died, there was another ghost called the Fury, and that was it. And there was some Forgotten around. And there was a big beetle called the Black Beast of Ark! But that was it. I mean, really. We got told it forged Titans, and the Door of Kamali was there. End. So, does it need someone to do the forging? How does it work? This is where we might be overstepping and asking for detail that I don't think matters. A lot of the time, I think the small details do matter, but on this one, maybe not so much. I mean, this is kind of tied into the Menzies story, though, isn't it? I don't know. Menzies did the forging? They forged themselves? Cossage chips in. It says, despite what Mabon claimed about the White Mantles being the Titans, the story journal entries written by the commander seems to contradict Mabon. Not to mention it's weird that the Titans' genders don't match the White Mantle, nor do their personalities beyond the slightest teases, or how Titans typically are created from multiple souls instead of single ones. Yeah, like that's the thing. You beat a Titan, it splits into two more, right? Like there's souls in each. So here's the quotes from the journal. Fortunately, Mabon had answers he was willing to share. To sum it up, he suspects the 3 Titans we defeated were forged by the souls of the 3 White Mantle members whose camp we discovered. To put an end to the chaos, he believes we must release each of their souls from the mists using a touchstone important to each of them during their lifetimes. Finally, after navigating the hellscape, we located the 3 White Mantle souls Each was merged with a demonic entity, a clear indicator of how the 3 titans had been formed. See, souls merging with demonic entities, that's not... I don't know. Also, he's quoting there from the final story journal thing, which I have not read in this series yet, by the way. Cottage says, the wording to me suggests that the trio didn't become titans, per se, but forged them, essentially taking over the role of the Fury, who had been the first Forge Master of manufactured titans, not counting the naturally forming ones. And then the trio was somehow merged with unknown demonic entities, helping them accomplish this. Cottage says that the Fury was the first Forge Master there. I don't know why he says it's the first. I don't remember any lore saying it was the first. It just was the one we saw in Guild Wars 1, but that's not the same thing. I wouldn't make that extrapolation. Anyway, unless there was like some actual dialogue from the Forgotten that said it was the first. The story journal has some other oddities, such as claiming that we need to release the White Mantle souls from the mists, instead of just from the realm of torment, which the actual in-game dialogue says. Because how can you release a soul from the mists when everything that ever was and will be is a part of the mist? Well, come on. Be fair to Arenanet here. They've been very clear that Tyria is like a location distinct from the mists. Yes, it is the mists, but it's its own distinct place, right? But more to the point, if you release someone from the mists, what, back onto Tyria? Are we talking about bringing them back to life? Through their touchstones? Is that what ritualists did with their urns and shit? I don't know. The story journal has some other oddity... It makes me wonder if the story journals reflect some earlier draft of the story before they simplified and changed matters to hit the deadline. Similarly, it feels like the Realm of Torment instance may have been intended to be more complex before some resource managing. First of all, the implied instance borders on the world map... Sorry, the implied instance borders on the world map suggest it would have stretched all the way to the Soul Forge rather than just for the area ahead. Yeah, and so we can see that here, guys. Look at this, right? The map, when you actually play the instance, we just go here, right? Somewhere nearby. But it actually, the instance is a lot bigger. So the idea is maybe we were actually going to go all the way down there in an earlier draft, and a lot of it got cut for time. Second, it's odd how the White Mantle trio just stand in a random corner in the foundry while we see what appears to be the Soul Forge's wicked flame in the background, as it'd make more sense for them to stand next to it to operate the foundry. Third, we don't visit the Forge at all to confirm Glenna's suspicions from the raid that it's been relit, and how, if we can shut it down and so on. Fourth, the White Mantle trio each patiently wait while we fight them one after the other, instead of the trio ganging up on us, as they should have done to turn the odds in their favour. So, it's like you can imagine the previous idea is you fight them one at a time in very different areas around the Forge. This makes me wonder if the original plan was for us to actually visit the Soul Forge, traverse to each corner of it, where each White Mantle would be operating their part of the construct. So we weaken the Forge by exercising each White Mantle in turn, explaining why the others don't attack us. They'd be guarding their respective corner in the meantime. Perhaps we would have checked the state of the foundry, used the Scepter of Ore or other means to snuff out the flame, to make the Forge inactive, if not using the Heart of the Obscure to outright destroy the Forge completely. Hopefully Indigo, Matthew, or someone else from the story team will have a Q&A or commentary about this to at least clarify what's supposed to be going on with the Titans and the story, if suspicions of late rewrites have merit. Yeah, you know what? If they write the story and then the gameplay can't make it in time, would that not mean they have voice acting, right? In theory, there is VA that they shot for the earlier idea, but it all got shit canned, so we don't hear it. Be interesting to see if in the middle of these next 180 days, they have like a little improvement patch or something. I'm definitely huffing copium there, aren't I? Cot says, so here's my completely ridiculous theories. Here we go. Mabon is Menzies. Someone else said this earlier. Broken mirror catalogued in Barvanisos is actually another one of Lyssa's mirrors. Just like Balthazar used the mirror to pretend to be Lazarus, Menzies used a mirror to pretend to be Mabon's echo. I like that, by the way. If that is the plot, that makes Lyssa like a definite fucking weirdo that's helping some of these other gods against the will of the Six through deception. Because she would have then had 2 examples of collaboration behind their backs, potentially. So yeah, Menzies therefore got the scepter, and he closed the gate. In a few weeks, another gate will pop up some other random place. Menzies will jump out of it, waving the Scepter of Ore, yelling, "I'm back!" Arenanet will do a mid-160-day patch to tease the next expansion. This will be on Janthir Gravis, which is just east above Anisos. He's talking about this area. If you remember, about 9 months ago, I was... Oh, well, hold on. We've got to leave the instance here. You're trying to go to the world map for you, and it doesn't work. Here, Janthir Gravis. Remember, about 9 months ago, we were suspecting, you know, map 3 would be here, and map 4 would be here, and Mount Barrier would be here, or some shit. Could have been all the isles. This will be on Janthir Gravis, which is just east. Also, Newt's wife could be there, because why not? Crazy theory, completely ridiculous theory number 2. Logan is Menzies. Queen Jenna is Lissa. So thing is, Queen Jenna has been possessed by Lissa for a while now, allowing her to protect entire cities with a Mesmer Dome, alluding to Season 3 there. Back in the Destiny's Edge book, she wrote these very persuasive letters to Logan, in fact convincing him to leave Destiny's Edge so that Kralkatorrik would fly south and not be killed. Why is that? Because Balthazar wanted Kralkatorrik for himself, but he was jailed at that point. By the way, I forget why I was jailed. Need to brush up. It's funny, in Spud Discord, we were talking a lot about that 2 nights ago. Because, you know, Balthazar got depowered and chained up in the mist, and this is a thing we've talked about many times. How was he depowered? Abaddon couldn't be depowered. We needed Cormyr to take that energy to get a new god. So what happened? Is there already a replacement for Balthazar? And Cormyr in the library scene does mention the 6. So wait, does she mean a Balthazar replacement? There's another god already? Who knows? You know, there's a lot that they left vague about all that. Anyway, most of the time, Jenna is herself. Like when she's crushing on Logan, perhaps. But sometimes, Lissa makes her do things. Logan's straight up retired to South Sun Cove. Now suddenly he's back, leading the pact. Nah, he's Menzies. He's planning some shenanigans. And using Ellen Keel to God knows what ends. I think he's trying to get his dick wet. I think those are the ends. Menzies is like, aha, I'm corporeal again. I haven't had sex for a millennia. Hello, Ellen. And we saw them go in the room. No, they weren't having sex. Sorry, guys. This is a PG-13 game. They were playing Uno. They went for a friendly game of Uno. It's just you need to do that in private sometimes, you know. It was very noisy downstairs. Uno. Okay. Crazy theory number 3. Lear is Menzies, which is why Lear wasn't there at the end. Lear went into the foundry, bumped into Menzies. Menzies did a little bit of possession, or maybe he did that back during the Cleanse Lear Open Wizard's Tower meta. In any case, Menzies touched Lear, was the one who forged Tatiana Ulrich Judge into Titans. That last theory is really interesting. They're all crazy and they're all funny, and I get you were just joking, everyone's Menzies, right? These responders seem to take you very seriously, by the way. Costas says, can you please consider writing the plot from now on? It seems you know better than Arenanet. Were you saying that ironically? And this other guy says, Aviator says, I think Theory 1's actually right, that Mabon is Menzies. Menzies can't create new gates. He can only open them on his own. That's why he's after the staff. He wants to create a new gate somewhere else in the mists. Or connect Tyria to somewhere else. Oh, I can see some Project Tyria elements there, maybe. Okay, yeah, the Lear theory is really interesting, because, like, when did we actually last see or hear from him? Was it at launch? Well, no, it doesn't work. Because Lear only went to the Forge in response to the Titans, which had already been made. Unless you're saying Menzies Lear forged the replacements after we killed them at expansion launch. I don't know. I don't believe in that. I think Lear is a plot hole, guys. Surely it's a fucking plot hole. And it's actually really gross. It's one of the things that aggravates me about this story more than anything else. I think it's a really bad plot hole. Oh my god, by the way. Liz has never been... No way. Oh yeah, because we're on Odrin. Ah, that's really funny. I was looking at Liz on screen. This Liz. And it had me tricked into thinking that I was playing Liz. And I was looking at the world map thinking, wait, what? How haven't I been to the expansion? I definitely have. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Is there going to be some Menzies sneakiness? Possibly. Another Mirror of Lissa? I don't know. I think Lear is intentionally left out to suggest there are other ways into the Forge. So what? You think he's still on his expedition? I mean, no matter what way I cut it, I think that's a horrendous story. I'm avoiding saying what I should say, which is that it feels like they forgot they wrote that. Doesn't it feel like they forgot? Doesn't it feel like they couldn't track all the moving pieces? Look, if the next patch opens with, by the way, Lear's gone missing, he's abducted, help out, then awesome. Maybe they redeem it. But the fact he wasn't at the party, like, you'd have... This is the issue. Where's the dialogue? If I could ask Isgarin, hey, where's Lear? Didn't you send him to the Foundry? Well, either while we were in the Foundry scene or in the Lion's Arch scene, if I could talk to the characters about the story, it would improve things a lot, but I can't. So it just feels so weird. It's like because the writers forgot about it, so did Isgarin, of course. You can only hide behind his arrogance for so long, you know, that we're not privy to his every thought or plan. Okay, so here's Emily's own comment. A quote from me, or a moment, 55 minutes into the last one. We're near the end now, guys, by the way. Mabon was looking at that Titan like Arenanet writers looked at Cryptis. Horrific, inherently evil nightmare creature. Oh, you poor little thing. Would you like some water? Do you need me to pluck an apple with my sky scale? What do you mean Mabon showed it mercy? That soul was tortured and twisted beyond recognition in an evil forge of literal failed creations. If there's any concept of mercy for it, it would be to release that soul from its tortured existence. Going just off my Titan knowledge. Haven't finished the stream yet. Yeah, to me, I think you're right. I think it's weird. I think the Mabon showing it mercy arc is exactly like Pather last year. I think they think it's nice to be nice, and that's thrilling to them in some way. I think it's boring. Actually, I think this idea that Mabon showed it mercy is really kind of when he shouldn't have. It's not like a sweet little baby. I think it's really bad in a couple of ways. Worst, it's kind of tone deaf to what people reflected on last year with Nios. Maybe I'm being a bit self-serving there. Maybe it's only me and people in my little community that reflected that way. Maybe everyone else loved it. Fine. But it kind of, like, seems really in that way. But another thing is, okay, so what, we're establishing the correct thing to do, perhaps, or the honourable thing to do, is to show these things mercy, right? Because they can be redeemed, because they can... is that really what they're saying? Because when you map that onto the Guild Wars 1 hero, I mean, that's kind of fucked up, right? The Guild Wars 1 slaughtered all of these things, didn't show mercy to any of them. I mean, Jesus. So it's kind of like turns what we're doing into a war crime to some extent, which is fun. I like the idea of indulging in that question, but we don't indulge in the question, do we? So it's just left feeling a bit weird. Osiris says at 20-4, I really hope the Kaith thing alludes... I really hope the thing Kaith alludes to isn't just more demonic possession that we're going to solve with the heart. What, the issue with the pale tree? Unless it's something fun, like we expel a named demon from her at the start and then go on some sort of adventure. But even that's a played-out story beat. I'd much prefer more Tyrion-specific reasonings. Yeah, I'm on the record as having said it would be cool to use the Heart of the Obscure to cleanse the tree in some way. I did say that a couple of days ago. Here at the end of Absolution, I 100% do not believe in that as a story beat. Because, yeah, it's been done over and over. I've had it. I'm done with the Heart of the Obscure. The fact that they didn't talk about it in any reasonable way, this expansion is unfailingly a failing of it. Sorry, unquestioningly a failure of it to me. So, yeah, I don't want to see that anymore. Certainly not. Here's another one from Emily. I'm sorry, are you telling me we've been running around with the Heart of the Obscure, which was originally introduced as a device that closes mist portals, and has since been shoehorned into doing anything we want, except close this mist portal? Brilliant. I mean, yeah. This story's been throwing around the mention of portals to the realm of torment like they're nothing. Isgarin can accidentally open one in a rage. Dagda threatens to lock him in there. Lear literally travels there off screen. But closing one of these portals is arbitrarily too difficult. Is this a parody? Have they forgotten that these wizards are portal specialists who have even their lowest rank no-name foot soldiers portal to events instead of walking? Also, we've literally closed these portals before. Like the rifts, the whole way through the expansion. Last time we found one in a mountain, we blew up that mountain. And it worked just fine. Last time we found one in the open, the Order of Shadows gave us some spikes that could close it. That one wasn't even part of the story, so clearly no big deal. Is this beyond the court's abilities? This portal even has a physical exterior. Just blow that up. Far from the only issue. This one's just really obvious and easy to pile on. Honestly glad I didn't play this patch or the previous one. Oof. Yeah, really going for the throat there. The answer to this is it's a special portal. It's a mist gate. It's a super powerful high-level thing. But that's such a shit answer. That's so difficult to swallow when we have nothing really explaining it. Now, I do think they're going to reveal it's a divine object. It's how the gods left Tyria, and Menzies opened it, and he's... I think that is where they're going to go. And once that is all written in, and you get it, this doesn't feel so bad, right? Yeah, they're portal specialists. They'll close all the other portals. They can't close this one. That's the big problem. What I think will never feel good is that the Scepter of All was able to do it, and sacrificing the Scepter of All was the thing. It's a fucking seer artifact. So what? I mean, oh. So we'll see. The patch starting, we got 4 to go, guys. Just 4. The patch, and so yeah, that's going to be this episode. It's a Q&A episode. I figured this was going to happen. We'll do the jumping puzzle and all the last bits of lore and the other fun stuff in the next one. Don't you guys worry. This is kind of like a community review. I quite like this format. Right? This is quite cool. Sorry, Jacob says in the live chat, I wonder if the writers disagree about the direction, tone of the story, so they keep waffling to accommodate each other's ideas. Well, no, I think they like... I think a lot of Janthir Wilds did have the style, the tone, the temperament that I like. You know, I think they wrote The Fall of Bavanisos. That's all new shit. I think they wrote it really well. There's a lot of really good analysis into the people that were there and how sad it was and how fucked it was. You know, that's a really fucked up dark story. Manakaz ended up killing all the Masat children and stuff and all the blood experimentation. They got grim. They got edgy. It's just in terms of how they write the main characters, I'm often kind of a bit like, I don't know. I wouldn't have had Waiting Sorrow characterized the way she was at all. And I wouldn't have had this weird thing where it sort of feels like we're supposed to feel sorry for her and not question her decisions. And I wouldn't have done the Anise Livia melodrama. And I wouldn't have had Mabon showing mercy to the Titan unless it really came as a problem, right? If it was a serious... If he really had blood on his hands over that mercy, I think it's a great story. Because you've written the one side. Isgarin shows Mabon mercy in the previous expansion. And now we see the yin-yang. We see where that goes too far, you know? We see where mercy is not always the answer this time. And I think that's beautiful. That's really good. You get a bit of both worlds. There's a bit of philosophy to that. I like that. But that's not what they wrote. They wrote, oh, he showed it mercy and it was kind of okay. I guess it depends how you frame it, because there was a Titan crisis here in Janthir Wilds. Some bearkin died over what he did, I guess. But again, they didn't revel in that or talk about it. Okay, so Jurak says, the patch starting with Livia charging in with the Scepter of All felt out of nowhere for me. I think what would have been good for this patch is a weekly story update that they used to do, like the Bang Hour conversations. Hell yeah, look, we can criticize Icebreed Saga. Icebreed Saga started really strong, and even when it was shit, it had those cage conversations where we got to talk to Jormag and stuff. Amazing. Some of the best stuff they did. Around End of Dragons, we had a lot of Goric timey scenes. They were less captivating to me, but were still pretty good. Those are the part of mini-X packs. Bring it on. I think they were really good. If a few weeks before the patch we got reports from the Tyrian Alliance about the locked door and different things that they had tried to open the city, it would have helped make the beginning of the story feel less jarring. Well, also just have Livia be one of the adventurers through all the patches rather than Anise. And have Livia bristling and uncomfortable and impatient the whole time. And then that wouldn't have been jarring at all to start the last patch and see, okay, she's finally snapped. But we didn't get her on screen at any point, so... Right. This is another big one here. I think this is the last one from Zuhang. Let's turn off the... Oh, no, this is okay here. This can be on screen. One of my comments disappeared, so I have to repost it. Yeah, I assume when people get like this and they type big comments, YouTube gets really fussy about it. And I hate it. I fucking hate that. Because I like big comments. And all I can say is it's not me modding this stuff. It's really not. They just fucking disappear. So, one of my comments disappeared, so I'll repost it. I think Mabon's story in this expansion is a deviation from his character. Just like how Isgaren's character went down a weird path before they retconned it. The idea is, when Mabon saw Svias alone in Bavanissos, he thought of himself and his first encounter with Isgaren. Isgaren spared him and gifted him a new life, so likewise, he spared the Titan. I thinking it would return to the Mist and live a new life. And that weird thing about how's it going to leave to the Mist, I don't know. The door's shut. The problem is these two situations are completely different. Mabon is a Massart, whose race had developed a society and a culture, and he expressed regret for what he did and his people had done. So when Isgaren chose to spare Mabon, there's a clear motivation in doing so. Mabon is capable of living a new life as an intelligent, sentient being who's willing to repent and make amends. Not to mention that Isgaren had the need for someone to work with him in building the World Spire. Now, what do we know about the Titans? They're demons created from tormented souls. They're as sentient as they can speak, but it's not like they have a society or a life or a complex personality. Yeah, and in fact, in Janthir Wilds, they can only speak fragmented, right? The souls from which they're made may have these. There's no indication that they're capable of complex emotions like regrets, or the possibility that they're capable of anything other than destruction. What did Mabon think Svias would do should it return to the Mists? If Arenanet was trying to suggest, oh, Titans are people too, then it's the Nyos thing again. If they're not, then we come to the conclusion that Mabon is too soft-hearted and too merciful when he shouldn't be. And he's also indecisive enough to leave the problem fester for 200 plus years. That's a good point as well, actually. Yeah, he could just go and check on it and realize it's not left. But that is not Mabon's character. He was written to be a kind and gentle, as a contrast to Isgaren, yes, but that doesn't make him a flat goody two-shoes that's nice to everyone and everything. Seekers of the Obscure established the concept of fractal research, which has clear moral problems, and while Mabon admits the costs of the research, he plainly states he thinks it's justified. He lived through thousands of years, and watched countless tragedies play out in Tyria, trusting Isgaren's judgment and staying clear of matters most of the times. It's not like he didn't understand long-term thinking, or he didn't know he had responsibility when things needed to be done. He does them. The Astral Ward and the Wizard's Court have been defending Tyria from Eparch for centuries. What's the difference between killing Nyos demons and killing Titans? That's a good point as well. He kills loads of Nyos demons. If anything, killing a Titan should be easier when it comes to morality because they're not natural creatures with a society or life. Arenanet tried justifying the idea that Mabon's tired of senseless bloodshed, but killing a Titan isn't even senseless like the Seer Massart War was. It would have been him protecting Tyria, and presumably other worlds out there from a Titan. Yeah, like, he just lets it into the mists and what, assumes it'll be nice? No, it will rampage through the mists! A Titan who would slaughter anyone alike, whether it's a maniac like Manakans or innocents like Anthos, and the new generation of Guildless. Isgaren, who had known Mabon for the longest time, describes his character as brutal, but fair. And now Arenanet tells me that this person would spare a Titan and keep the problem hidden for 200 years because of sentimentality? Sorry. But I don't buy it. I mean, how can I question you on any of that? You're right. You're right. I guess I was hand-waving some of this because I like the idea that he's merciful and it bites him in the... you know, it becomes a problem. But maybe you're right that he should never be this merciful. I mean, you can't articulate it any better, can you? Like, it's such a weird character beat. So the same guy, you know, that lied about Guild Wars 2 and Eye of the North and stuff earlier. He said, so this is where it gets a bit personal, and again, this is, you know the type, they're just fucking overly aggressive, no social skills. But here's what he says: they have D-class writers, so the story is what it is, and they just naively made the crypt spelt wrong, the cryptist story first, then they built them as demons, only to later make a chapter of redemption, and cryptists are also people, skull. At this point, most people I know in the game just want a skip button in the story because the content is so weak. In 14, the whole game has done much better. Even the stupid trials that Arenanet do are poorly copied. So, you know, like, I have to agree it is better in 14. But so then that gets us onto the bit I really want to talk about, which is Mikaram here. It says, okay, Indigo Lind has been the narrative lead for more than 2 years, and as much as I liked her passion for the lore, she should step down from this role and let someone else more talented take on the lead of narrative. The entire narration since Secrets of the Obscure is basically just her putting random ambiguous threads that are either being repeated over and over again or retconned a moment later to fit a new direction. I wish Tom Abernathy stayed as a lead. He was a really great, outspoken person, always enjoying interactions with the fans and listening to them. His take on Season 4 was the best narrative Arenanet ever told, and it's a shame he no longer gives proper direction for where to go with the story and how to properly present the characters. So, all I'll say on this, again, because I've got to try and be respectful, you know. What I'll say on this is, I've covered this game. I've been media for this game, so to speak, for a long time. I've been reading dev comments for a long time. I've seen the snippets of information about how the studio's run. I've been to the studio. And so I would say I'm about as informed as you can be about Arenanet, I think. Hopefully that's not too arrogant for me to say. And despite that, I would not feel confident blaming the issues of the story on one person or the other. I don't know, man. I mean, who are we to know? There's a lot of writers in there. There's a lot of chefs. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of scheduling, a lot of resource management going on. Playing this game of pointing at specific people, I don't know whether it's smart. It's definitely not respectful, but I just think we're in a place of ignorance with this. I don't know. But yeah, I also think it would be a bit cowardly for me to not to platform comments like this. So there you go. I don't know what you guys think. There you have it. So now we have really big, really like Pokey this expansion. It was like Bram, but good. Says Mato David Gutierrez Gonzalez 6556. I like a good long name. I don't often read the names. Yeah, I agree, man. I like Pokey. Pokey was all good for me. And I get why you say he's like Bram. I mean, Jesus. Get Bram in a transformation and close enough. I don't know. Yeah, you know, I believe in characters that don't know what the fuck's going on and ask a lot of probing questions. And Pokey was this. And, you know, I liked that character's takes on a lot of the situations and the emotions and all that shit. All right, here we go. This is the penultimate one, guys. Okay, so we got a comment here from SDO Rye. There's only one more after this, and then the community's review is over. So here we go. Ready, everybody? I'd like to do this next year, by the way. I don't know how watchable this is, but this has been quite fun for me. Look, overall, I really love when Guild Wars 2 engages with past story and lore from Guild Wars 1 and before. But ultimately, they utterly failed this time. Not because the lore they did give or connect wasn't interesting, but because the last patch just left a big, big mess, with many unexplained things or straight up contradictory to what's been established before. I have so many questions I feel like we might not get an answer to, and that is not good. 1. Who opened the gate? Svias? Then how come he didn't just leave on his own? Why make him this sad, pitiful being, all alone, all on his own, that made Mabon spare him, if he could have just left the entire time? Speaking of which, didn't Mabon assume that the Titan could just operate the gate and return to the mists? If Mabon knew, or at least thought, that the mist gate would lead to where Titans are coming from, and that the Titans themselves could operate it, how come the other Massart didn't know it was a mist gate to the realm of torment that the Titans could just access at any time? How come Mabon never told them? Surely, despite all of this, Mabon wouldn't want his entire race to just be slaughtered, especially since once we've learned of some kind of Messiah who didn't want all those sacrifices. Yeah, guys, I don't... Can I just remind you all? What did I say over and over and over again through this Absolution playthrough? I said that the Mist Gate cannot be to the Realm of Torment. How fucking crazy is that? Sorry. How crazy is it that the Mist Gate goes to the Realm of Torment? The Masat who live here are trying to keep the door of Kamali shut, which leads to the Foundry of Failed Creations. They're desperately keeping this door shut while opening this one that goes to the same place? What? That doesn't make any sense. It has to be that the Mist Gate can go to multiple locations. It has to be. And then it's just like some sad irony that after they've been defeated, another entrance is here. It has to be that goes to multiple destinations. But we don't hear that in-game. So we're just left to assume it was going... That's insane as a story. And maybe I missed it, but I'm pretty sure they haven't said anywhere that it's like attunable to multiple places. Next, number 2. Did the 3 White Mantle humans open it then? Since Via seemingly couldn't? Yeah, like, okay, rewind to one of the early comments on this episode, right? Where is he? Oh, I'm not gonna... It's too many. It's too long. It's like 3 hours of things going back. But, that guy saying, why would you think it's Menzies? Svias opened the door. If Svias could just open the door the whole time, then why wouldn't the other Titans from the original Titan invasion just open the door and invade? Why fuck about with the door of Kamali at all? Just open that one. The Masat brought it into the hearts of their city. Just go for it. Titans can't be able to open that door. Unless it's because the Masat had it attuned to another destination at that point. But again, every time I'm coming up with these little headcanon rationalizations, it's too much to juggle and remember. In a year from now, when they maybe answer some of these plot beats, are we going to really remember all these casual rationalizations we made and like actually go back and connect all the dots and see if it makes sense? Or is it going to be 3 years later and we're in the middle of some other beat and it just kind of gets left on the floor? So, did the 3 White Mantle open it then? How come an entire race of spellcasters and almost gods couldn't do something that 3 mere average humans could? And then, explain how, if not the Titan, who did? Is this supposed to be some story set up for the next expansion? I assume it has to do with the 3 White Mantles sacrificing themselves in order to somehow send themselves to the gate. But even then, you think the Masat would have thought of that too? No? With the Door of Kamali also requiring sacrifices and all? Amazing point! So yeah, I'm wondering if the 3 White Mantle, they kill themselves. That's what I assume. They kill themselves. They end up in the Realm of Torment because, in my opinion, Menzies helps them out. Maybe. Also, I don't know. And then they do the forging from the other side and... I don't know. But if we assume that, yeah, you can just kill yourself and get to the other side... Why weren't the Masat doing that? In fact, ignore all of this. Ignore all of this. Just as a fundamental question, right? Why were the Masat stuck on Tyria? Why could they not kill themselves and get to the mists that way? How does this exile work? Now, there could be a really cool answer to that, which is, hey, that's the beauty. The Seers knew self-sacrifice was necessary. My theory is, they knew about the Bloodstones. They made Bloodstones. The Seers understood sacrifice. I like to think the reason their population dwindled so much is because of self-sacrifice. The Seers got it. The Masat were so arrogant and fearful as a people, they never did. And that's the irony. There was always a way out. It was just when they died. When they died, they're freed. That's their penance. The rest of the Masat civilization exiled, air quotes, them to Tyria. But it was only ever temporary. The point is, once they give up their lives, they're in the mists and they can rejoin society. And the Masat just didn't know. The exiles just didn't know. That, to me, that's a very cool story. But nothing I just said there is in-game. And you would think in the Janthir wilds, it would have been. If it wasn't answered in this mini-X pack, when? You know, the odds we get a complicated and intriguing story like that told in a fun way. But yeah, so assuming it's not that, then yeah, what? I don't know. I feel like I've said I don't know so many times recently. I'm not ashamed to not know, but maybe it is a bit excessive. So yeah. Question 3. Even if we accept that somehow mist gates are now, or can now, be tied to some entity that can control them, how the hell is a Mabon one of those entities now, when his entire kin failed to operate it on any level? Well, maybe because he was dead. Maybe that plays into what I was just talking about. Who was tied to it before the 3 White Mantle came? Only Mabon and Sveus? How does one get tied to these mist gates? And if Sveus was tied to it anyway, why couldn't he open it on his own? He didn't, right? Yeah, he needed the White Mantle. He baited the White Mantle into the city to open it, right? If he could open it on his own, why did he need them? There's plenty of souls in the mists. He needed the White Mantle. I think these things will get answers, by the way. It's just very difficult when the storytelling is at this quality level to know what are intentional cliffhangers and what are not. When so much is thin, it's hard to revel in enjoying that thinness, you know? Couldn't he just open it? Or did we close it for good with the scepter? How come he can just do that to begin with, instead of to need to go sever the connection between the 3 White Mantle and the gates? And yet, by the way, the fact the Scepter of Ore can deal with all of this shit is crazy too, when you think about prophecies. And the fact the White Mantle, and therefore the Messiah, had the Scepter on hand. Did this mist gate always lead to the Realm of Torment? If so, what makes it different than the Door of Kamali? So the Messiah spent years keeping the Door of Kamali closed, with very demanding sacrifices through the soul batteries to prevent the Titans from coming. But then at the same time, they spent a huge amount of effort into getting and trying to operate a mist gate that also leads to the Realm of Torment and functions as a gate for Titans to go through. Yuck. Why didn't the Titans just go through the mist gate in Barvanisos to begin with? It feels like the Door of Kamali just seems redundant. Just take the mist gate, boys. It does the same thing and you're already at your prime destination, and it can't be stopped by the Messiah. Did the latter just bring the Trojan horse into the capital themselves? Makes the entire prophecy story absolutely redundant. Which I just ranted about. 4B, if the above is true, and for example the mist gate can just change destinations, who made that happen? Again, I think the answer to that is Menzies. And how come the Messiah couldn't? But then again, it still begs the question, if the Titans themselves or another entity siding with the Titans somehow has control over the Mistgate, including where it goes, why was the Door of Kamali such an issue? Just operate the Mistgate. It's been sitting in the freaking Masart capital for years, and voila, you're right where you want to be. Yes, from Abaddon's side, that's what I just mentioned. From Abaddon's perspective, why fuck about with the Door of Kamali if Titans can open it? So again, I don't think Titans can open it. Either Sveus or Menzies, whoever you believe it was, needed the White Mantle to open it. And this might be Project Tyria, the God's New Garden, shit like that. It could be what they're going to, which is unbelievably exciting, by the way. Then there's this entire Livia conflict that just doesn't feel incredibly artificial. It objectively is artificial. She's had and used the scepter for literal centuries. But again, there were periods of time where she just didn't. Anyway, she says so herself. And somehow no one has a problem with that. And obviously nothing bad happened. But now suddenly Livia is having and using the scepter. Is this existential threat? Give me a break. Seriously. And wasn't the scepter a legit option at the start of this expansion? And the Alliance just decided it was worth to try other avenues first? That's true, yeah. I mean, leave the gate open, but use the scepter to control any Titans. Go in, close the foundry. Yeah, like, why sacrifice the scepter to close the portal? Just linger in the forge a bit and try to unlight the fire. Presumably the answer to that, Lahir knows, but he's absent. Didn't Isgarin himself literally say, yeah, use the scepter, it's fine. We have way more dangerous stuff anyway, lol. And now suddenly Livia's a criminal that needs to be locked away and kept away from everyone because she's dangerous? My god, that is bad writing if I've ever seen it. The only way, in my opinion, they could somehow salvage all of this is essentially, as others have already said, to make Mabon not actually Mabon, and someone like Menzies, who pulled a big one over us to acquire the Scepter of Ore for whatever his evil plans end up being. Guys, seriously, in the live chat, help me out. Did we see the Scepter get destroyed or not? I don't remember. My head was spinning. Do we see the Scepter get destroyed or not? The only way, in my opinion, this could somehow salvage all of this is essentially Mabon was not Mabon. It was Menzies using a mirror or whatever. He's got the Scepter of Ore now, and we'll figure out what his big evil plans are. But then again, it would mean the commander's naivety would finally pay off for once, story-wise. And we all know Arenanet isn't going to have the commander be naive. I mean, they did a bit of a naivety thing briefly. In Guild Wars 1 they did, with Winds of Change. I just want to say, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. I cannot believe people would say the only ones who don't like the story are those who rushed it, when there's plot holes all over the story. Rushing it probably makes it better, since in that way we wouldn't think long and hard about it anyway. Okay, everyone in chat is saying no, you don't see it get destroyed. It just apparently loses its power and it's lost in the mists. See, so that could be a setup. That could be a setup. Basically, Mabon has the Scepter, and there are millions of demons in the Realm of Torment who will sense the Scepter and go after it. So Mabon's rest will be him rip and tearing through demons for the next centuries. Well, unless he can just sort of first place. Whatever he did to get there, he can use to leave, maybe? I don't know. So, the last one, it says I'm dropping frames here now, by the way, guys. And we might be lagging a bit, which is a bit worrying to me. We're really near the end of the episode here. I'm sorry I'm not looking at the live chat enough. I really am. It looks like there's some really cool discussion. This will probably be one where I go back after the episode and read what you guys have to say. Here is the last comment and the end of the episode. And I'm going to rush the outro a bit because lag. Leon minus Mensch 8745. Oh, this is such a random question for me to end on. How do people who have Janthir Wilds but not Secrets of the Obscure get the Heart of the Obscure? I think they just handwave it. There you go, guys. And we're back to the start. Absolution. This is what you've been saying about it. This is what I've been reading about it. Yeah, I think this story doesn't work in a lot of ways. I think a lot of the character moves are weird. I think a lot of the dots don't connect. I think there's some haziness there, like, oh shit, is, like, do we believe in the big Menzies grand conspiracy? Will it fix all the holes? Is it fun to sit there wondering if it's a good story for another year? Certain bits, I think, certainly were a bit iffy. But again, some bits I really like. So join me next time. We'll explore the rest of the city. We'll get some more of this, like, actually good world building, in my opinion. I think the concepts at play were really cool. Yeah, and do you guys think we'll get a retrospective from Arenanet this year? This is our retrospective. There it is. Do you think we'll get one from them, or do you think they'll just keep quiet about it? Because what can they say? What can they possibly say here? Put a smiley face in chat because it's all just one big hint. You know? I don't know, like... And I can see why some people are starting to get accusatory about specific devs, specific talent, specific shit like that. Because people want to know... They want some outlet. They want some light at the end of the tunnel. They want to feel like there's something wrong that they can identify and fix. But I don't know. Until we know what the actual premise of the next mini X-Pack is, it's really hard to tell. Because, like, if the next mini X-Pack is just full-on, fucking, full-blown, direct sequel, you know, we're knee-deep in all this subject material. Like I say, the next bit opens with Livia coming in and explaining what the fuck's going on. Maybe I'll give it a pass, and maybe I'll say, okay, we could discover some of these answers. It's clearly on their mind. But if the next mini X-Pack seems to be a big tangent, then, oh, it's horrendous. It's really, really iffy. We'll revisit these plot points when we add the voice acting would do it. I mean, I don't believe that. I don't think this is going to structurally change much. I think this patch is what it is. I really haven't kept up, though. Are there any tweets? Are there any comments on the forums? Is there anything? Are they hiding and seeing how people react? I mean, I assume that's true. Lear, it's mind telling me what you're doing in the pool. Lear is so bad. Honestly, that's such a fucking... I'm going to read it again. I'm going to end the episode reading it again. But it's not all doom and gloom, guys. We have roller beetle racing tomorrow. We have a fractal to do. Genuinely, I'm looking forward to that. And I am genuinely looking forward to map comp. I guess I haven't missed any crazy points of interest, but you know, it sounds like there's a good jumping puzzle to do. And yeah, hopefully we get to see more of that Masart Gardener ghost. I thought that was awesome. And there might be some more journals there too, which would be really good. Letter from Lahir. Gix, I'm glad your tour of our library and archive was beneficial. It's a joy bringing more curious eyes into our halls. I prodded the old curator, Isgaran, into giving me a little more information on the Foundry of Failed Creations, per your request. He was a little shy about sharing too much detail, but I have... So Isgaran knows a lot more, but I have confirmed... Maybe the next patch opens with us back in the Foundry, but like cleaning it up for real? I don't know. But I've confirmed a few of your thoughts. So long as the soul flame at the pit of the Foundry is still lit, new titans can still be forged. Given our visitors, Isgaran assumes that the Foundry has either remained active or was recently relit. Certainly the exterior realms are brimming with souls following the Dragon Cycle and the Cryptis. But perhaps we'll focus on the Foundry while you focus on the Titans. We will focus on the Foundry while you focus on the Titans. Please let me know if you need anything else. And then that's it. He just fucking dips. Guys, doesn't it feel like they wrote this at Janthir Wild's launch without a concrete idea of where they were going? My assumption is they write that whole mini-X back. Surely they're not winging it while they make the original bulk. Surely they're not winging it. But so many things this time don't fully connect, or just feel so odd to have gone missing, that I wonder if they are, to a certain extent, still writing the story. Like, this feels like any number of random documents in the expansion that's just giving you a little tease about something else that's not actually going to matter that much in the end. There's a very important book hidden in the jumping puzzle, says Ismadan. Ooh! So wait, did he actually go, or is he relaying info he learned? It sounds like he's going to go. We'll focus on the Foundry. It sounds like they're going to go and check if it's been relit. I mean, if they can arbitrarily and easily just go pop over there and have a look. I mean, Jesus, this whole story doesn't work. They would see the White Mantle ghost there, and that's it. Oh, you know what? The whole way through this fucking year, I've been talking about how it could be another Foundry. Do you know why? One of the reasons why. Because that actually makes sense. Lear doesn't just instantly solve the story for us in that scenario. Alright, guys, I'm too rambly. My throat is sore. Luckily, my indigestion's gone in that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you for one more episode on Janthir Wilds. That will be next time. Roundup of some of the content we haven't seen yet. That's it from me for Liz today. Thank you very much, everyone in the live chat. I'll be reading the comments as always. And yeah, thanks, guys. Janthir Wilds. See you for the end of the playlist next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Hold on. Let the hard drive spin up. Let the hard drive spin up. There we go.